Chapter 41: New Features in the Rubik's Cube. For several weeks after that, Robin's life felt surprisingly full. He threw himself into the spirit of 5 years of college entrance exams, 3 years of mock tests, soaking up every scrap of magical knowledge he could. Together with Harry, he sparred endlessly with the old bat, but a teacher's authority still outweighed a student's, and they kept losing points. Fortunately, the other teachers liked him. Whenever he excelled at something, he was rewarded 1 to 5 points. One deduction here and there was easily outweighed by the frequent gains, so overall, he still came out ahead. Whenever Hagrid invited him to sit in the cabin in the game reserve, Robin stole glances toward the Humping Willow, and finally, under some pretense, asked Hagrid to fetch him a silenced magic saw from Hogsmeade. A few days before Halloween, after herbology, Robin, as usual, asked Professor Sprout for withered specimens. "Here you go. There are plenty. Take whatever you like. Neville's got a talent for herbology. If he could just lose that clumsy streak and apply himself, he might do something real in herbology research," Sprout said, carefully tidying the broken flower pot Neville had knocked over with an amused, resigned tone. Sprout had a knack for sizing people up. In the original story, Neville's destiny had been herbology teacher. "Having one talent is already something," Robin replied, selecting 10 withered plants. "Nobody's perfect, right?" Sprout paused, still picking up pottery shards, and smiled. "You're right." In a quiet corner outside the first greenhouse, Robin tossed all 10 withered herbs into the central matrix of the giant magic cube. Cultivation value +2, +1, +4, +7. Adding them together gave him 104 cultivation value. That bump pushed the magic cube past its threshold, and it leveled up. 2 months of steady, incremental gains had finally pushed the cube beyond the 5,000 mark. Robin summoned the magical creature cultivation magic cube parchment scroll. Sure enough, the header now read LV3, 52, instead of LV2, 49901 and 2 new functions had appeared. New functions. 1. Free range. Select a magical creature placed in a grid and release it to a designated location in the outside world for cultivation. Note, level restrictions mean only 1 creature can be released at present. 2. Evolution. Automatically generate a step-by-step evolution plan based on the captured creature's talents and skills. Note, a progress bar will appear beneath the grid. When full, that evolutionary stage is complete. Filling speed depends on the cube's level, the creature's magic value, and its combat value. Free range? That was exactly what he wanted. He'd been itching to deal with the Humping Willow for ages. Evolution 2 sounded promising. Robin brought up the green grid where Nagini sat. In the bottom left corner, a dark green progress bar, about 10 centimeters long, read 100. He prodded it a few times. No light curtain, no visible effect. The parchment gave no hint of the evolution's direction. All he could do was wait. Putting the scroll away, Robin withdrew his consciousness from the cube and pulled out paper and quill to begin drafting a plan for subduing the Humping Willow. It was 11 o'clock that night in the Gryffindor boys' dormitory. Harry slept soundly, hands folded on his chest. Ron, suffering a cold and refusing the invigorating potion Madame Pomfrey had offered, snored like a sow, loud and undignified. Robin stood by the window in his black robe, watching the Humping Willow through night vision binoculars. By late October, the air at Hogwarts had turned bitter. A cold wind moaned through the castle. Robin triple-checked that no one, or no animals, were near the willow, replaced his binoculars, and slipped out of the dormitory. He'd considered opening a window and flying down on a broomstick, but that would be too conspicuous. Anyone looking out might spot him. Losing house points over a broom ride was a small matter. He could earn them back, but if the school tightened curfew because of it, that would be disastrous. He chose the stairs. A dark cloud hid the moon and blackened the path from the castle gate to the greenhouses. The darkness suited him. His footsteps were light, the hem of his robe whispering against the grass as he made his way. Before long, he arrived at the Humping Willow. The main trunk was enormous. 3 people holding hands probably couldn't encircle it. About 6 or 7 meters up the trunk had a flat cross-section, as if someone had sawed it. Roughly a meter below that, several whip-like branches the size of battering rams jutted out, and from those grew countless slender twigs, as thick as a thumb. In the original tale, the willow's main trunk could bend like a bow. Its branches swept with the force of a charging bull, and its twigs struck like hailstones the size of marbles. Its root system was deeply anchored, limiting its reach. Judging by trunk length of 6 to 7 meters, branch lengths of 4 to 5 meters, and twig lengths of 5 to 6 meters, allowing for overlap and the fact the trunk can't lie flat, he estimated the willow's effective attack range was a circle centered on the trunk with a radius of about 12 meters. Whether his calculations were accurate, he'd soon find out. Robin summoned the garden goblin Grant from the cube. "Ah, where am I? Ah, terrifying willow. Lilisa, where are you? I must profess my love, boo-hoo." "Quiet," Robin hissed, clamping a hand over Grant's mouth. "Don't shout. If you attract the wrong attention, neither of us will have a good night. Do you still want to court Lilisa Rowland? If so, you must behave." Grant's eyes flashed like a faulty filament the moment Robin mentioned his crush. "Have you found the goblin courtship secrets in the library?" he demanded, bouncing anxiously. "Of course," Robin lied, and Grant took that to mean he'd found the book and that its contents would surely guarantee success. "Oh, master, my most revered master, you are so kind, so benevolent, so loving." Grant fawned, his usual lecherous tone and familiar lines unaltered. Robin could only stare at him in exasperation. 42. Decisive moment. "Stop it. If you keep spouting nonsense, I'll kick you up there and let those thin branches skewer you like a shish kebab." Grant looked at the thumb-thick branch and felt his glutes clench on their own. "Master, please." "Then behave. Now go stand over there." Grant shuffled his big feet to the spot Robin had indicated. Robin pulled a slingshot from his black robe. He remembered the original story. Anything that hit the Whomping Willow would be beaten by its branches. He loaded an ice pellet, aimed at a slightly smaller branch, and pulled the elastic as far as it would go. The pellet flew and struck the branch dead center. The treetop swayed 2 or 3 times like water plants and then stilled. The branch hadn't lashed out. Not enough force? Robin's eyebrows twitched. A flash of cunning lit his deep, dark eyes. He turned to the bewildered garden goblin. "Walk 2 steps forward, then 2 more, then 1 more, then— Oh, are you insane?" Grant, impatient by nature, heard the third then, and without thinking, brought his feet together, bent his knees, and leapt hard forward a full meter. Bang! The Whomping Willow snapped into combat mode. Its main trunk bent like a drawn bow, and the branches twisted and lunged. Countless long, slender branches fused into a huge fist and came down, fast, precise, and brutal, toward the garden goblin. The fist slammed into the ground so hard that more than half of it was buried in the dirt. Robin squinted at the dense curtain of thin branches. Whatever was under that fist was completely hidden. He called tentatively, "Grant, are you still breathing?" There was only the rustle of leaves. A full minute passed without a sound. Robin sighed inwardly and briefly lit 3 white candles in his head for the goblin's soul. Then a rough, croaky voice sounded behind him. "Master, why didn't you tell me the weird tree would thrash people?" "Oh, he's alive." Robin turned. Grant had his fists clenched, his neck stretched, and his eyes blazing. "Humph. Disobey and then blame me? Needs disciplining. Did I say to jump forward a meter just now? Grant, every time you disobey an order, I'll note it in my little notebook. If the total marks ever exceeds 5, I'll give your love rival, Truett Frent, the Garden Goblin Courtship Manual for free." At the mention of the manual going to Truett, Grant broke down. He collapsed and wailed, begging Robin to erase the mark. The shrill pleading grated on Robin's nerves. He frowned. "Get up. If you perform well tonight, I'll consider taking the mark off." "Master, tonight, if you tell me to face west, I will never face east. If you tell me to advance, I will never retreat." Grant scrambled up and hurried back to the spot Robin had originally told him to stand. "Master, how many steps forward this time?" From the previous strike, Robin had measured the tree's attack range precisely. It was about a meter wider than his earlier guess. "No more stepping. Grant, from here dig straight down 5 meters, then dig a horizontal tunnel toward the Whomping Willow. And every 5 meters you dig, make an exit that opens upward." He pointed to the edge of the pit the big fist had carved. "Master, digging's my specialty. I promise I'll finish it." Grant began digging and, in short order, completed the task. Robin took out the slingshot again, pulled the band taut, and looked at Grant. You'll stick your head out of an exit in a moment. When the branches are about to strike you, duck back down into the tunnel right away. Yes, master. For Lalisa, Grant thought, I'll risk everything. He crept back to the rim of the large pit. Robin shot an ice pellet. The treetop swayed a few times and then fell silent, but Robin knew the willow was primed. He mentally opened the magic cube and released Nagini and Little Gray. Nagini landed and immediately coiled around Robin, her large head rubbing affectionately against his cheek. Little Gray zipped through the night air like an overinflated balloon escaping a mouth, radiating an eager, I want to fight energy. Nagini, when the willow's branches hit the ground, use your flower roll entanglement to stop it from retracting. Understood? Nagini flicked her tongue, her vertical pupils sweeping the 15-meter tree. She nodded, then slithered to Grant's side, half extended and ready for combat. Robin summoned Little Gray. You use Soul Devour. How much you can take depends on you, but don't suck the willow dry. Little Gray excitedly circled Robin's neck 3 times to show he understood. Robin suppressed the urge to swat him. If he didn't know that creatures contained in the grid couldn't harm their master, he would have given the little beast a smack. Above Grant's head, Little Gray's circling abruptly slowed as a chill ran down his spine. Good. All 3 magical creatures were in combat mode. The moment of truth had arrived. Robin stretched out his arms, palms flat, and pulled the silencing magic saw out of his sea of consciousness. A 1-meter-long magic saw thunked into his hand so hard his wrist trembled. Hiss! The thing was heavy. He slung the wide strap over his shoulder and rested the saw against his hip. Bearing the weight on shoulder and hip made it manageable. Grant, go into the hole. Little Gray, hit the main trunk. Nagini, if you can't hold the branch, withdraw. Your safety comes first. Robin gripped the saw's handle, channeled magic into the iron casing, and chanted, Activate! The saw's teeth whirred at incredible speed and made no sound. The 10 galleons had been worth it. Yes, master! Grant went in headfirst, feet in the air. 5 seconds later, he popped his head out of an adjacent exit and waved provocatively at the tree. The willow's main trunk bent like a bow again, branches fused into a fist and smashed down toward Grant's position. When the fist was a meter from the ground, Grant ducked back into the hole and scrambled down. Bang! The thin branches plunged into the pit again. Nagini reacted like a startled rabbit, slithering toward the joint where the thin branches met the main branch. She wrapped herself tightly around that junction before the willow could retract, holding the thin branches in their fist shape. Robin stepped forward with the saw. Screech! The teeth bit into the bark and shrieked, the sound stifled, but the pain real. The willow howled, its branches trembling as it tried to straighten its bow. Nagini pressed her full weight onto the treetop, remembering Robin's command, preventing any pullback. 2 minutes later, with a sharp snap, Robin severed a branch. The main trunk sprang back free. The willow writhed, throwing about its remaining branches as if venting pain from the pruning. Then the main trunk bent into a bow once more. 2 thick branches, like battering rams, formed into 2 huge fists and slammed down toward Robin and Nagini. Nagini, go for the thicker branch! Chapter 43. Conquer the Whomping Willow. Hiss! Hiss! Nagini flicked her tongue and slithered back, keeping just out of the Whomping Willow's reach. As the thicker branch came down and slammed into the ground, the thinner one sprang forward like a startled rabbit. Nagini immediately coiled around it, using her coiling entanglement to lock it in place. Robin lunged forward at top speed, cranking his magic saw to maximum blade rotation. Chirp! Chirp! He pushed down on the handle with everything he had, trying to shorten the time needed to cut through the branch. 2 branches striking at once was unexpected. He had to hurry. He watched the thinner branch recoil upward and realized they were running out of time. If the Whomping Willow's giant fist hit them squarely, they wouldn't die, but they'd take a nasty wound. Better 1 injured than 2. Nagini, you retreat first. That big fist is only connected by a bit of bark. It can't lift it properly, he shouted. Hiss! Hiss! Nagini's body shook violently around the branch she held. She didn't even turn her head. Her refusal was unmistakable. Seeing that, Robin had no choice but to keep going. A cold gust swept down from above. One of the heavy branches was about to smash him. He planted his toes, shifted half his weight onto the saw, and begged the branch to fall a little slower. Of course, the branch couldn't hear his thoughts. When the thumb-thick twig struck his head, there was a sharp snap. He'd sawn it off. "Nagini, it's done! Retreat quickly," he called. They both scrambled back, but the Humping Willow's fist still came down. It hit only about 5 meters from where they had stood. Strangely, the blow wasn't a crushing, clenched punch. It was soft and squishy. The thinner branches rubbing against them felt more like a tickle than a threat. Robin backed beyond the attack range, turned, and saw why. Little Gray was ramming the trunk, pounding at the branch stub over and over. Each impact weakened the big fist a little more. Well, the brute didn't seem intent on murdering its own master today, Robin thought, wryly. He raised an eyebrow at Nagini, and, together, the trio rushed the tree and finished the job. Robin and Nagini sawed. Grant popped out of a burrow to draw the other branch's attacks. Little Gray cleared the secondary threats by battering the trunk. 20 minutes later, the Homping Willow had 3 flat-topped branches sawn off, and its combat power was reduced by more than half. The lawn was a battlefield of pits, burrows, scattered branches, and sawdust. Robin looked around and grinned. Brutal. Too brutal. A sharp ache stabbed beneath his left collarbone. Had the Whomping Willow finally been subdued? He stifled his excitement, eyes fixed on the tree, and cautiously intoned the spell. "Contain everything!" The Homping Willow vanished in an instant, leaving only a long, dry, grass-filled hollow where its roots had once held the soil. The lawn sloped about 15 degrees down toward the center of the pit, proof of how extensive the tree's underground root system was. He had to conceal this disappearance fast. After chanting, "Contain everything," 3 times, his consciousness, along with Nagini's, Grant's, and Little Gray's, slipped into the sea of consciousness. Before him floated the giant Rubik's Cube of his mind. He narrowed his eyes and scanned the colored squares until he found a green one. Embedded in it was a tiny totem, a miniature Humping Willow, bald but with roots far longer than its trunk. He poked the totem and a light curtain flashed out. Name, species, Whomping Willow. Level S-rank, personality. Prefers quiet, becomes agitated when its branches are struck. Physical state, branches sawn off, soul power lost 40%, recovery period 5 months. Skills, sweep all in burst state, can sweep all objects within a 10-meter radius. Heavy punch, physical attack with bull-like force, chaotic branch dance, treetops tremble, emits sounds that create a terrifying atmosphere. Magic value, 10,000. Combat power, 12,000. 2,000 points of magic flooded through Robin's meridians. The exhaustion from the last hour of intense fighting melted away, and he felt instantly refreshed. Chaotic branch dance. What on earth was that? Would it be a hit at Nearly Headless Nick's next Death Day party? He named the Humping Willow Little Green, toggled the Rubik's Cube's free-range function, and withdrew his consciousness. Under the night sky, the lawn smoothed out again, and the huge tree pit refilled with the willow's trunk and sprawling roots. He scanned the debris until his gaze landed on the bald stump of Little Green. The mess would be easy to clear up, but the tree's baldness was another matter. If Professor Sprout saw the Humping Willow in that state tomorrow, her shrill scream would echo through the castle. Robin definitely did not want that. He began scooping the sawn branches and sawdust into his sea of consciousness. When he reached for the last thin branch, he froze. It was 12 inches long, about 48 centimeters, jet black, tough and hard to the touch, and strikingly like his own wand. Of course, the ebony branch would make a perfect substitute. He stowed the last thin branch in his sea of consciousness, summoned a large iron shovel, and set to work filling all the burrows and pits. When he finished, he wiped his forehead, took his ebony wand into both hands, and pressed its tip to the Humping Willow's trunk. He fed his internal magic into the wand, and for the first few minutes, nothing happened, just like at Ollivander's. But after 5 minutes of steady channeling, the sawed branches began to regrow at a visible pace. When the new branches were about 4 meters long, several thumb-thick knobbly offshoots appeared. Those knotty branches grew painfully slowly, and to his surprise, each inch of growth demanded 3 times the usual magic. At 3 meters of growth, Robin felt his reserves teetering on empty, but he couldn't stop. Gritting his teeth, he gathered the last of his magic into the wand. The ebony wood converted his final spark into a thin green life force that surged through the trunk and into the highest thin branch. The tip extended by a centimeter and a dark green sheen crept over it. Little Green had finally shed the title of Bald Humping Willow. Robin collapsed, utterly drained, sprawled on the ground with his arms and legs spread. He gasped for air, then, unexpectedly, he began to laugh. His body was completely exhausted, but the sweet satisfaction of having finally subdued the word he barely allowed himself, longed for, the Humping Willow, made him giddy. If only he could use that chaotic branch dance right now, he thought, chuckling. It would probably put 10 Neville Longbottoms straight to sleep. 44. A different kind of luck. About 15 minutes later, Robin felt his strength come back a little. He forced himself to his feet, checked the Humping Willow and the surrounding area. Everything was exactly as he'd left it, then slid into his black robe and melted into the night. The next morning, his two roommates woke him up together. Ugh, there's no class first thing. Let me sleep a bit more. Robin pressed the back of his hand to his forehead to shield his eyes from the bright sunlight. He sounded a little hoarse and lazy from lack of sleep. Oh, come on. Robin, did you sneak out of the dormitory to do something naughty while Harry and I were asleep last night? Ron complained, yanking the blanket back from his friend. You're really pushing it with that one. The boy's teasing chased away Robin's drowsiness. He swung his legs out of bed, pulled the curtains wide, and pretending to bask in the sun, stole a glance toward the Humping Willow. A short, squat figure was kneeling by the roots with a bucket. Professor Sprout, he guessed, fertilizing the tree. So the scene from last night had been tidied up. Lucky. Harry, what time is it? He asked, then poured a glass of water and drank on tiptoe. 9:58. We've got 17 minutes before class. Defense against the dark arts is on the 3rd floor. A fair walk. If you don't get moving, we'll be late. Robin's heart dropped. He'd slept late because there wasn't an early class, and now he was going to be late for Quirinus Quirrell's lesson. Quirrell, who acted as if garlic and order were the highest laws. Robin had learned quickly that Quirrell treated Dada like a strict fast track. If you were late, you'd pay. Since the bludger incident, Robin had been careful. He'd spent a week watching and noticed that Quirrell watched him back in much the same intense way Professor McGonagall watched Harry. For reasons Robin couldn't quite parse, shyness, cunning, or something else, Quirrell's attention seemed to be constrained to the Dada classroom and the Great Hall. Quirrell would often keep Robin after class under the pretense of teaching him advanced defensive spells, and then he'd try, obliquely, to probe about the Ravenclaw diadem. When Robin firmly denied having it and gave logical answers, Quirrell would grow agitated and offer ominous theories. The diadem's give-and-take curse, how it granted wisdom but fed on a wearer's life force until after 3 to 5 years it left them close to death and moved on. Robin's standard reply was blunt. The diadem isn't with me. Telling me that won't help. Quirrell would clench his lips in anger, but Dumbledore was in the castle and the master plan hadn't been completed, so he hadn't dared to touch a student. It's exactly 10 o'clock, Ron nags, seeing Robin standing with a water cup in hand. You need to. 2 minutes. Give me 2 minutes, Robin snapped. He set the cup down, washed up quickly, grabbed his textbook, and ran, munching a piece of bread on the way, up to the 3rd floor. He stumbled into the Dada classroom just before the bell finished ringing. The 3 of them were still panting when Quirrell entered. After class, Quirrell descended from the podium. Lestrange, do you still have questions about the correlation between curses and counter-curses that you'd like me to answer? Robin rolled his eyes inwardly. Couldn't the man think of a new pretext? No, thank you. He gathered his book and stood to go, but Quirrell blocked the aisle. The sharp, unpleasant smell of garlic made Robin's head throb. Professor, Halloween is the day after tomorrow. There's a dinner in the Great Hall tomorrow, and we've agreed with Professor Flitwick to help decorate. You see? Hermione stepped up behind Robin with an excuse. If you have any questions about curses and counter-curses, Professor, you can always come to my office. I will, Professor. Quirrell's voice trembled with the sort of wounded ego that had just been denied. You will? Robin thought, but he and Hermione left together anyway. For 2 months, Hermione had been unusually focused on Robin, barely paying attention to Ron and Harry except to bark orders. Ron and Harry were secretly thrilled. No one bossing them around as much felt like a relief. "Robin, what kept you?" Harry asked, pushing his glasses up. "Why do you even ask?" Ron said. "It's obvious. Professor Quirrell wanted to keep Robin after class to teach him other magic." "Robin, you're so lucky." "Luck?" Robin glared. "Do you think you'd want this kind of luck, Ron?" "It's too much for anyone else," Ron said, half in admiration, half in terror. "Only you could handle this kind of intense luck." "Heh, coward," Hermione murmured as she passed Ron. "Lucky, huh?" Ron shrugged, speechless. "Be glad she didn't give you a lecture." "Come on, let's eat downstairs. That half slice this morning didn't fill me up." Robin looped his arm through their shoulders and steered them toward the stairs. Inside the empty Dada classroom, Quirrell, who had been lingering by the door, straightened, picked nervously at his fingers, and muttered, "Master, what exactly is the diadem for?" Something rustled in Quirrell's thick purple turban. Then a whispering, eerie voice answered from within. "Strange, very strange. I feel it was destroyed, and yet its aura lingers. Find it. Learn what happened. This will be very useful for my plans." "Master, that child is very vigilant and very clever. If you cannot handle a first-year student, what right have you to be my servant?" The voice cut him off sharply. "Master, please, don't abandon me. I'll think of a way. Remember, Harry Potter can only die by my hand." Silence followed the turban's rustling. Quirrell's face was grim. He ground his teeth and kept repeating the name Robin Lestrange under his breath. A few minutes later, an almost manic change crossed his features. The grimness melted into timid, nervous laughter. He opened the door to the corridor and headed down to the first floor. Robin had no idea Quirrell had just been given an impossible command. At that moment, he was happily tucking into a roast meat feast, leaning in to listen to Fred and George's plans to give Filch a fright. "Fred and George are insane," Harry said, eyes wide. "They actually want to do something to Mrs. Norris at the Halloween dinner?" "Calm down," Ron said. "They've been planning mischief for ages. Besides, they wouldn't actually hurt her. They just want to shave her bald," Robin finished flatly. A few days earlier, the Weasley twins had set off slug fireworks in an empty classroom. Filch had spent a whole day cleaning the slime from the walls. He'd complained to Professor McGonagall, and the boys had been punished with a 10-point deduction and assigned a 2,000-word essay on the proper use of magical mischief. For the Weasley twins, the punishment meant nothing at all. Filch's biggest mistake had been to call them born not taught, to treat them as incorrigible, and that only made them more restless. They decided to get even by going after Filch's most treasured possession, his long-haired cat. If you shaved a long-haired cat, Robin wondered idly, would its fur feel any different from a sphinx's? "Robin, tomorrow night, what are you going to dress up as to beg the professors for sweets? A pumpkin head? A vampire? A ghost? An owl? A werewolf?" Ron rattled off outfits with a grin. Robin put up his hand to stop him. "I'm not dressing up as anyone. As soon as tomorrow's feast is over, I'm going back to the dormitory to sleep." Except for being a pumpkin, all the other ideas needed costumes and makeup, too much trouble for something he'd only wear for one night. The original tale said the grand Halloween feast was interrupted when a mountain giant broke into the dungeons, Robin remembered. Fine. My plan is to cut 2 holes in a tattered bedsheet, put it on, and tie a black rope around my neck. Heh, ghost." Ron beamed. "Harry, what about you? What will you be?" I've never celebrated anything like this at my aunt and uncle's," Harry said. "I don't know what I'd wear." "What a coincidence. My bedsheet's huge, big enough for 2 ghost costumes," Ron offered like a friend. Robin caught the look Harry was about to give and couldn't help but point out, "Ron, is this the same tattered bedsheet that Scabbers peed on and couldn't be cleaned?" It is. But you're wrong about one thing. I soaked it in cleaner all night and scrubbed it for half an hour. You couldn't smell a thing now, even if you stuck your nose to it. Harry, are you going to be my ghost partner?" I think I'll pass. Robin, how's tonight's pudding?" Harry steered the conversation away from urine-soaked linens. "Not bad." The pudding was soft and sweet, melting on the tongue with a hint of lemon. House elf cooking was surprisingly good. "Forget it," Ron said, pouting. It's no fun being a ghost alone. Let's just leave that sheet at the bottom of the trunk. The tantrum faded quickly. After polishing off 2 big chicken legs, he was back to laughing and telling stories about the Chudley cannons. The next day, Robin slipped through the Gryffindor common room entrance with the standard book of spells, grade 1 and 1,000 magical herbs and fungi under his arm, and smelled a warm, sweet pumpkin scent. "Smells good," he said. "It's roasted pumpkin," Hermione said, chin lifted. "Eating roasted pumpkin, carrying pumpkin lanterns, dressing up as pumpkin monsters. Those are the long-standing customs for Halloween Eve." "Tsk," Ron said. "They're just a few common facts. No need to act like Hogwarts' #1 know-it-all." Hermione ignored him. After greeting Robin, she turned and walked away. "Wow, she's got a temper. Robin, how did you make Hermione go from scowling at you to greeting you?" Ron kept pestering as they headed for the stairs. "Guess," Robin said with a triumphant smirk and started up. Ron jogged to catch up, asking what trick he used to soften Hermione. But the answer would have to wait. The class bell began to ring. When Professor Flitwick entered Charms, carrying a textbook, Ron was already sitting up straight. Flitwick climbed to the podium and called, "Everyone, take your seats. No whispering." "Turn to page 66, Flitwick said. "Today we'll learn the incantation and wand movement for the levitation charm. The levitation charm makes objects float. Remember, how much magic you put into your wand, the clarity of your pronunciation, and the firmness of your intention all affect whether it succeeds. The wand movement is swish and flick. That means first make a long ah, then, from the end of the wave, flick a vertical line downwards. Practice with me now, swish and flick. The wave should be fairly long, and the bottom of the vertical line should line up with the base of the wave." The first years raised their wands and tried the movement until their wrists ached. Flitwick finally stopped them. "Good, you're all very quick students. Next, the incantation." Croak, croak. A sudden chorus of toad croaks came from under the podium, followed by shrieks. "Ah, a toad! Don't come here!" a blonde girl cried, her hands flying to her face. The toad, unpredictably animal, leapt onto the girl's hand. She flailed, and the creature flew across a desk and landed 2 meters away. A curly-haired boy snatched the standard book of spells, grade 1, and flicked it at the toad. "Get lost, ugly thing!" The toad behaved like a castaway, 1 minute on a desk, the next on a head, next clinging to someone's robes, turning the classroom into chaos. But none of them fussed more than Neville. He ran around, bent double, chasing his toad, calling, "Trevor, stop, stop, Trevor, boo-hoo, don't leave me, boo-hoo." "Wingardium Leviosa," someone cried. Trevor was hit by the charm. His limbs spread, his belly exposed, and he drifted up slowly until he hung 5 meters above the floor, frozen by the magic. "Trevor, boo-hoo, my Trevor!" Neville sobbed, wiping tears from his eyes. He shuffled toward the podium, hands stretching and retreating over and over. Professor Flitwick watched him fuss and understood. "Come now, child, open your hands and touch your little fingers together," Flitwick instructed. "Oh, all right, Professor." Neville sniffed and did as told. Flitwick flicked his wand. Thump! Trevor landed perfectly in Neville's cupped palms. Neville closed his hands over the toad and murmured, "Trevor, please don't leave me again, okay?" Only the toad's croak answered. "Back to your seat, child," Flitwick said. "Yes, Professor," Neville said and sat down with tears still in the corners of his eyes. Flitwick looked out over the first years, who were now watching him with eager, expectant faces. "It seems Trevor's little escapade has given you all a taste for the levitation charm. As I said, the incantation is Wingardium Leviosa. Be sure you pronounce it properly. There was once a wizard called Barufio who said the F like an S, and a wild ox came charging in and knocked him flat. If you'd like beef for dinner all next year, you may pretend I said nothing just then." Flitwick's voice was sharp and thin, winding like a mountain path, and more than half the class giggled at the image. 46. Changes in Magic. Professor Flitwick waited until the laughter died down, then handed each student a white feather and instructed them to practice the levitation charm in pairs. Harry and Seamus were paired together, Neville with Ron and Robin with Hermione. Robin noticed his partner wasn't opening her textbook or taking out her wand. She was staring at him with an intensity that wasn't like her usual competitive self. Hermione often liked to be first and earn house points. What was she up to? "Aren't you going to practice?" he asked. "You go first," she said, voice edged with competitiveness. He realized she expected him to mess up so she could shine afterwards. No matter. It was only a levitation charm. Robin gripped his wand, aimed at the white feather, gave a flick and a swish, and with a steady voice intoned, "Wingardium Leviosa." The feather rose, slowly at first, then hovered 2 meters above the desk. Everyone in the classroom, including Professor Flitwick, stared, not just at the feather, but at the rest of Robin's desk. Textbooks, notebooks, quills, and an ink bottle had lifted into the air along with it. Professor Flitwick was the first to recover from his surprise. He adjusted his spectacles and hurried to Robin's desk, only to find the desk itself floating. How did you do that?" he asked, breathless. Robin waved his wand. The desk and its contents descended gently back into place. Flitwick's excitement only increased when he saw Robin controlling the speed of their descent. He asked again how he did it. Robin, remembering how his magic felt after being drained in the battle with the Whomping Willow and then recharged, purer, more energetic, kept that to himself. He knew a thin strand of power had been enough to produce that effect, and that stronger output could have hoisted much more besides. Those thoughts stayed unspoken. "I did as you taught, sir," he said calmly. "Firm intention, a flick and a swish, and clear pronunciation. Wingardium Leviosa." "Is that so? Come, Lestrange, cast it again for us." "Yes, Professor." Robin aimed at the desk, flicked and swished, and spoke precisely. "Wingardium Leviosa." The desk rose, carrying the feather, books, and ink bottle. Once they were over a meter up, he guided them back down with a downward wave. "Oh, that was excellent. I've never seen anyone achieve such an effect on their first attempt," Professor Flitwick exclaimed, adjusting his glasses with a delighted sigh. "Lestrange, you've set a splendid example. 5 points to Gryffindor." "Thank you, Professor," Robin said, then sat and turned to read the annotations in his textbook about the levitation charm. The extra points had electrified the rest of the class. Wand tips flashed and voices chanted across the room as everyone tried to match what Robin had just done. Hermione, who had been sulking, now snapped to attention and drew her wand. She flicked once, clearly enunciated the spell, and the white feather on her desk rose evenly into the air. She didn't smile, though. She looked put out. Robin guessed why. She'd wanted to be first. He nudged her shoulder. "You did well on your first try. Don't be so hard on yourself." "Humph," she muttered. "People only remember the first. They'll never remember who came second or third." Her pout was faint but real. "That's not necessarily true," Robin said. "What's the highest mountain in the world?" "Mount Everest." "And the second and third?" Hermione hesitated. "K2 and Kanchenjunga," Robin supplied. "You." She was about to retort, thrown off her script. He kept going before she could think of a comeback. "Fourth is Lotz, fifth Makalu, sixth." He rattled off the list until Hermione raised a hand. "Stop. You win. I can't argue with you." She sounded helpless, but the brief diversion had restored her confidence. If she'd missed first place, she would aim for precision. Hermione practiced obsessively, tracking in her notebook the intensity of the magic she used, the length of the wand movement, the exact stress of the words, and the feather's ascent and descent, trying to find patterns. Not everyone had such success. Harry and Seamus waved and muttered the spell over and over, 50 times, perhaps more. Yet the feather on their desk did not budge. Seamus lost his temper and jabbed the feather with his wand. Sparks flew. The feather burst into flame. Harry smacked his textbook down to smother the blaze and lifted tart, charred remains to show Professor Flitwick. "We need a new feather," he said. Neville and Ron weren't faring much better. Neville's charm went awry, and his feather transformed into a little flying knife, darting about wildly. Just as it arcs toward Lavender's eye, Robin intervened, casting the levitation charm so the knife obediently returned to Neville's hand. Professor Flitwick confiscated the knife and refused to hand Neville another feather. Ron, meanwhile, couldn't get his feather to lift at all. He yelled, "Wingardium Leviosa," and then, out of frustration, fanned his hands as if to blow it upward. Hermione had had enough of the noise. She put down her quill, cheeks creasing with annoyance. "Wingardium," came Ron's high, wrong drawl from behind her. Hermione spun around. "You're saying it wrong," she snapped. "Even if you practice 100 more times, the feather won't float if you don't say it properly." I'm saying it exactly like Professor showed us, Ron protested, wand still raised. No, Hermione said, cutting him off. It's Wingardium Leviosa. You draw out the gar and emphasize the O in Leviosa. 47. Halloween Party Ron, already furious after his botched spell and Hermione's scolding, exploded. If you're so clever, why don't you stand at the front and teach everyone? Humph. Robin's smarter than you and has more magical talent, but you don't see him showing off. Showing off? I was only reminding you, and you call that showing off? Everything you said was true, right, Neville? I don't know. Humph. Ron, you messed up the spell and still won't admit it. Fine, keep making mistakes. It won't be me who fails exams and gets held back. Ron started to argue, but Hermione had already turned away and stuck her fingers in her ears. He flushed with anger. Charms ended, and everyone grabbed their books and hurried to the first greenhouse, but Ron was still simmering. In the crowded corridor, he kept telling Harry how obnoxious Hermione was. Honestly, every time I talk to her, it's a nightmare. She's worse than Malfoy or Snape. Just looking at that smug face makes me sick. No wonder she's always alone. No one can stand her. Bang! A shoulder collided with his and sent him stumbling. If Harry hadn't grabbed him, he'd have gone down. Ron looked after the retreating brown-haired girl, the memory of Hermione's glare making him nervous. Ron, she probably heard you, Harry warned. So what? I said the truth. Never mind her. Let's go, greenhouse. The second class was herbology. After Professor Sprout took roll and noticed Hermione absent, she asked if anyone knew where Miss Granger was. No one did. She told Lavender and Parvati to keep an eye out and went on to explain the medicinal properties and cultivation of self-heal. Hermione missed defense against the dark arts and flying that afternoon too. Logically, Ron, who had likely driven her off, should have gone to apologize. He refused, convinced Hermione would show up at the Halloween feast, and he could set things straight then. Around 7, the trio left the dormitory and went down to the Great Hall for the Halloween Eve feast. The hall was full of Western-style Halloween decorations. Hundreds of red-eyed bats fluttered against the ceiling, and dozens of dark marshmallow-like clouds floated low. A soft breeze from the clouds made the candlelight in the carved pumpkins gutter and dance. Robin reached for one of the low clouds as he walked past the Gryffindor table, but it slipped away. Robin, you want to catch a cloud? I'll help, chirped the Weasley twins. After all, we're in the same house. Can't leave you out, they added, smiling. They flicked their wands, and 3 clouds charged toward Robin. He suspected a trick and stepped aside. Robin, do you want some? Splash! Neville took a soaking. He stood there drenched as Fred and George laughed. Lucky you, Fred called. Others dream of being caressed by clouds. You actually get soaked. Fred pretended to grab a cloud, which zoomed away when his fingers were a hair away. Honestly, I'm jealous. No need to change after the feast. Looks like you joined a water tribe. George teased. Neville, nearly in tears, sniffed. I only wanted to ask Robin if he wanted candy. I didn't mean to. Neville, I'll come back to the tower with you so you can change, one of them offered. Wah! Okay! Neville sniffled and followed him away. As Robin passed the twins, he pointed out Filch in the corridor, carrying a hairless cat and wearing a glove with a missing pinky. A glove with a missing pinky? George, you left evidence. Fred laughed. Don't blame me. You were supposed to do cleanup. George shot back. Cleaning up doesn't include picking up your broken glove. It's dragonhide. Where did it break? Fred retorted, and they started wrestling, more roughhousing than real fighting. By now, Robin was heading back to the dormitory with Neville. 15 minutes later, he tugged Neville, now in dry clothes, out through the portrait hole. As he was about to close the fat lady's portrait, a clear voice called from the other side. Wait! Parvati Patil squeezed through, darker-skinned and striking, with deep features and bright eyes. In Robin's mind, she and her sister Padma were the prettiest girls at Hogwarts, though to him, Gryffindor's house beauty was still Lavender. Thank you, Parvati said, shy. Where's Lavender? Isn't she always with you? She's still getting ready, Robin answered. He let the fat lady's portrait swing closed. The feast is about to start. Let's go. Wait, Parvati said, grabbing his sleeve and pulling him back. Hermione's locked herself in the girls' lavatory. She's crying, really upset. Lavender and I tried to comfort her, and she chased us away. Robin, Means you're usually partnered with her in practical classes. You should go and talk to her." Robin glanced at the dark sky beyond the window. The great hall would fill with heads turned to Quirrell any moment now if he started shouting about a mountain giant. He weighed his choices for 3 seconds and made up his mind. Third floor, girls' lavatory. He put his hand on the brass doorknob and yanked it back with a hiss. He'd forgotten the lavatory was charmed. Touch the girl's knob and a boy gets a nasty shock, and vice versa. "Who's out there?" came a muffled, husky voice from inside. "It's me, Hermione," she said. The feast started. There's roast chicken, roasted pumpkins, sausages, mashed potatoes, pudding. "Robin, stop," he said, unable to help a laugh. "Reciting the menu outside a lavatory. Are you a fiend?" "Then open the door," she cried. "No, you go away. I don't need you meddling." "You won't let me recite the menu, and you won't open the door. Then I can only keep talking until you open up." 48. Ran into the women's room. Robin pulled out his wand and whispered, "Alohomora." Click, the lock cylinder sprang open, and he pushed the door inward. The women's restroom had the same layout as the boys', minus the urinals. 5 blue-green stalls faced a row of yellow-white sinks, a large mirror hanging above them. A soft, husky voice, tight with irritation, came from the stall on the inner wall. "Robin, get out now, or I'll scream pervert." Robin stepped closer and regarded the stall door, which rose to head height. "Everyone's downstairs at the feast," he said. "You could scream yourself hoarse, and no one would hear you. If you're really angry at Ron, why don't you just punch him?" "Punch him? That would break school rules. I don't want Gryffindor losing points. And anyway, he was right. I don't have a single friend at school." "No friends?" So that's why she was upset. Robin put one hand on the door panel and folded the other over his chest, feigning great injury. "Hermione, we've been deskmates for 3 months, brewed 5 potions together, and jointly raised a pot of snake fairy grass. And yet I can't even be called your friend. I thought I was doing you a favor when I covered for you the first week, peeking into the boys' restroom." "Shut up," Hermione ground out. Robin kept going, teasing, and then the bolt slid back. With most of his weight against the door, he stumbled and tumbled into the stall. His back hit the edge of the toilet seat, and he swore to Merlin. The instigator, Hermione, laughed. A bright, brief sound before she clamped her mouth shut. "Hey, friend, had enough of my embarrassment? Can you help me up now?" When she heard the word friend, something flickered in Hermione's brown eyes. She pursed her lips. "Do you really mean it? You consider me a friend? Otherwise what? Skip the feast to tour the girls' lavatory." Robin groaned theatrically. "Hurry up, my back's killing me." "I'll take you to the hospital wing." Robin knew a performance had to be complete. When Hermione hooked a hand under his shoulder, he deliberately didn't help. She hauled him toward the door, and he made a show of wincing and grimacing, pretending to be in terrible pain. Before they reached the doorway, a foul stench hit them, like an overfull latrine on a hot summer day. Hermione sniffed and craned a worried look at Robin's rear. There were no water stains. "Did you break the toilet?" she asked. "Nothing. Let's go." "It looks like we can't." Robin's hand slid along his sleeve and closed around his wand. He narrowed his eyes toward the door. If that smell had already drifted this far, whatever was out there couldn't be far behind. Trolls, dumb, brutal creatures, liked raw meat and did not much care whether their prey was animal or human. Thump, thump, huff, puff. The floor shuddered with each heavy step. Bell-like gasps grew closer. "What's out there?" Hermione whispered, visibly trembling. "I don't know," Robin said softly, "but if you keep holding me like that, your waist will be bruised purple." Hermione looked down. Her grip had tightened without her noticing, her fingernails digging into his robe. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." A head peered through the crack of the door, dusty, cocoa-colored, with dull, dead fish eyes blinking at them. "Robin, why didn't you close the door when you came in?" Me, a boy. Closing the girl's door would be weird, wouldn't it?" "Watch out! That thing's coming in!" The creature shoved the door and lumbered inside. Only then did they see how enormous it was. It stood roughly 7 meters tall, its dull, mud-colored skin looking as if it had been patched together from giant clods of earth. Its proportions were wrong. Too small a head on a long torso, short, tree-trunk legs, and enormous flat feet like little boats. The arms were absurdly long, One hand gripped a thick wooden club that scraped the stone floor with every step. "It's a mountain troll," Hermione breathed. "I read about them. They eat people." With each step the troll took, Hermione dragged Robin backward until they were pressed against the far wall. "Hide!" she whispered, tugging him into a stall. They crouched there, listening to the troll's heavy boots and the scraping of its club. The creature couldn't figure out why the sweet-smelling prey had vanished. It slammed its club, smashing stall doors and floor tiles as if driving small animals from a burrow. Hermione went pale and clutched at her chest. "I don't want to be eaten by a troll. That's too humiliating." "You'll be dead. Who cares about humiliation?" Robin muttered. "Besides, I'm here. You won't die while I'm around." Crash! The stall door they were hiding behind splintered under the troll's blow. The troll peered in and gave a low, grating laugh when it saw them again. It raised the club to strike the brown-haired girl. Hermione screamed and squeezed her eyes shut. At that moment, Robin stopped pretending. He pushed himself to his feet, planted his feet, and channeled a heavy, powerful blow, like a Whomping Willow in motion, into the troll's midsection. His punch landed on the creature's belly with the force of a charging bull. The troll staggered backward, shocked, and almost fell if not for the stone wall behind it. "Hermione, go find a professor," Robin shouted. "I'm not dead." Hermione gasped as she opened her eyes. The troll regained its balance and swung again. Robin grabbed Hermione and ducked under the sweeping arm. Crash! The last remaining stall was smashed to splinters. The massive creature roared and swung its club, searching for its prey. Robin and Hermione dodged, weaving around smashed porcelain and splintered wood. The troll was slow, but its reach filled the cramped room. After a narrow miss, Robin caught Hermione's eye and gave a sharp, urgent nod. "You first." "No, I'm not leaving you here alone. I'll open the door. We'll go out together, then lock it from the outside. Yes, lock it from the outside, trap the troll inside, and the professors will know how to deal with it." Hermione let go of Robin's hand with a small, determined smile and stepped carefully over splinters and broken wood toward the brass door. The troll seemed particularly interested in Hermione's brown hair. It dragged its club and lumbered after her. Robin grabbed a metal pipe and struck it against the sink, making a ringing clatter. "Oi, big guy! Over here!" he shouted. Bang, bang, bang. After more than a dozen blows, the troll's attention snapped to him. It turned clumsily, its dull, fishy eyes fixed on the shining pipe. "Come on, you big oaf," Robin taunted, and raised the pipe high. Bang! The pipe hit the troll right on the nose. It howled, flinging its head back and howling toward the ceiling. The creature swung its club and started toward Robin. Hermione, meanwhile, had reached the door and was wrestling with the lock. "Robin, it's no use. The lock's broken. I can't open it." "That can't be right," Robin snapped. The troll squeezed in through the crack. It's not the sort of beast to shut a door behind it. Hermione's eyes went to the broken lock, then to the mess of the doorframe. She didn't have time to argue. The troll's simple mind had latched onto the food on the counter. It turned and lumbered after the desserts. "No, don't. Don't come any closer." Hermione backed away until her spine met the brass door. When the troll lifted its club, she shrank down, sobbing. "Wingardium Leviosa." The moment the levitation charm left her lips, everything in the cubicle, splinters of wood, pipes, tiles, the club, even the troll itself, floated up slowly and hung motionless in the air. "Stop crying," Robin called. "The troll's subdued." Hermione wiped her eyes on her robes and straightened against the door. "I wasn't crying," she protested. "The book says a mountain giant can weigh up to 2 tons, Robin. Your magic won't hold it forever." "Forget the lock. Help me with the tiles," he hissed. Hermione stared. Robin had already pried loose 4 or 5 tiles, their fractured edges sharp as razors. Seeing the troll's small, thick skull, she understood at once. "All right," she said. She went to the stall's step, forced a brick free, and smashed more tiles until a swath of floor a meter from the brass door was covered in jagged ceramic. Robin pulled her down under the sink and swept his wand. With a sudden, heavy crash, everything that had been suspended plunged back to earth. Dust and debris filled the air. The overhead sink shuddered and the floor shook as tiles and the troll hit the ground. They waited breathless until the noise died away, then peered out. The troll lay motionless, blood pooling beneath its head. Hermione leaned forward, voice trembling. Is it dead? She glanced at the Rubik's Cube totem, which was heating up in her pocket. If the beast were dead, the totem wouldn't be reacting. No, Robin said. Unconscious. It won't be on its feet for at least 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. Relief flooded Hermione. She hugged Robin, whispering, We're safe. We're alive. We won't be troll food. Robin's mind raced. With the troll unconscious and its back turned, now would be the chance to contain it into the Rubik's Cube totem before it woke and suffered more. He gritted his teeth against the sharp pain in his collarbone, kept Hermione from turning, and mouthed the incantation, Contain all! In an instant, the 7-meter behemoth vanished as if swallowed by thin air. Robin put on his act with theatrical shock, pointing at the floor. It's gone! The troll's gone! Hermione spun to look. Where the muddy, enormous creature had lain, there was only a mess of broken tiles, a thick wooden club, and a dark stain of blood. Does it have some kind of growth charm? She murmured, bewildered. A white glint of light flashed from a crack at the base of the toilet stall. With a resounding crash, the brass door fell forward and clanged to the floor, perfectly covering the bloodstain. Dust billowed out. Professor Snape and McGonagall pushed through it, followed by Quirrell, and by Harry and Ron, who dashed straight to Hermione and Robin. Quirrell cowered by the doorway, clutching his robes to his chest. McGonagall's mouth was a hard line. She glared with thinly contained fury. Snape stalked back and forth, robes swishing, eyes like knives. Where is it? Snape demanded. Who? Robin said, playing innocent. Don't play games. Where's the troll? McGonagall snapped. It just disappeared, Robin blurted. It was lying by the brass door, and then, whoosh, it vanished. Both professors stared at him. McGonagall's voice was ice. Snape's gaze bored into Robin as if determined to unmask any lie. Even Quirrell, still trembling, looked at him with a puzzled, suspicious expression. Hermione wished she were anywhere else but had to speak up. Professor, it's true. Robin isn't lying, she said. I read about trolls in the library. They're as strong as oxen, but slow and stupid. I thought I could handle it alone. If Robin hadn't found me, it would have eaten me. She explained quickly. Robin banged the pipe on the sink to draw the troll away while I tried the door, but the lock was broken. When the troll raised its club, Robin used levitation to suspend the troll and everything around it. Then we broke tiles and put them where it would fall. When we let everything drop, the troll hit the shards and passed out. Professor, if you move the door, you'll see the tiles we arranged and the blood. What we're saying is true. McGonagall fixed her with a long, assessing look, then flicked her wand. With a metallic groan, the brass door was flipped aside. Beneath it, exactly as Hermione had described, lay the broken tiles and the pool of blood. 50. It's all said and done. But as far as I know, Flitwick was still preparing his levitation charm lesson plan last night. The practical props he prepared were a bag of white feathers, not a several thousand-pound boulder. When Professor Quirrell emphasized the word boulder, it was clear he didn't believe Robin and Hermione. Yet every student in Charm's class had seen Robin perform. Professor Quirrell, if you asked Professor Flitwick whether Robin could make a boulder float, the answer would be yes, Hermione said, chin high and full of confidence. This morning in Charms, Professor Flitwick praised Robin's talent and even gave him 5 house points. That's right, I can vouch for it, Harry added. Ron did his best to look wholly convinced that Robin could levitate a troll. Professor McGonagall studied them for a moment, then said thoughtfully, If that's true, Miss Granger, you've been frightfully foolish. How could you possibly hope to deal with a mountain giant after only 3 months of magic? Miss Granger, did you think about how long you might spend in the hospital if you were hurt, how much schoolwork you'd miss, or how worried your Muggle parents would be to receive a letter about an injury? For that kind of recklessness, Gryffindor will lose 5 points. After scolding Hermione, McGonagall turned to Robin. As for the whereabouts of the mountain giant, the school will investigate thoroughly. Lestrange, you were lucky. Your plan with Miss Granger to scatter the shards happened to strike the giant's weakness. You showed courage and cleverness. For that, Gryffindor will be awarded 10 points. With 1 deduction and 1 addition, Gryffindor actually gained 5 points. One professor clearly didn't like the outcome and was about to speak up. Professor McGonagall, I believe. Enough, Severus. Don't dwell on this. We have many other things to attend to. The four of you, unless you want to write a reflection report, you'd best get back to your tower." The four hurried out of the bathroom. A few meters from the door, Professor Quirrell, taking a short breath in the corridor, called out to Robin. "Robin, have you ever heard this saying?" he asked, sounding nervous. "What saying?" "If you steal something that never belonged to you, you will be cursed, and bad luck will follow you to your death. The only way to break the curse is, hey, I haven't finished yet." A curse? Quirrell's mind had always seemed sharp. Why this melodrama? Could the village tyrant have scrambled his thoughts when it parasitized him? The thought made Robin smile. As he reached the corner, dust-covered, he thought of a retort and turned to shout back. "Professor, that sort of wisdom is best told to your troll." Quirrell's eyes went wide. The sight of Snape heading for the fourth floor and the troll's sudden disappearance had clearly unnerved him. He wanted to follow up and ask what Robin meant, but McGonagall and Snape, having finished inspecting the bathroom, had already left, and the troublesome students had gone upstairs. Quirrell could only fidget with his fingers and try to look suitably shaken. "Robin, does Professor Quirrell," he stammered, unable to finish. Hermione was still shuddering at the memory of the mountain giant swinging its club. "I don't know either, but people say he knows a lot about trolls," she muttered. Robin shot Ron a wink, signaling him to apologize. Ron, feeling miserable already from the morning's fright and seeing Hermione's state, hurried out. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that." Having narrowly escaped being clubbed, Hermione felt oddly philosophical. Sometimes breaking the rules isn't the worst thing, and sometimes loyal friends matter more than what's in a book. All right, I accept your apology, but you really mispronounced the levitation charm. It's Wingardium Leviosa. Stretch the gar and drop the sa at the end. Try the charm now and see if I'm right." Ron, still shaken, followed her instructions. When the feather on his palm rose slowly into the air, his mouth fell open. "See, it worked. You should have listened." After showing off a little, Hermione remembered something and said suspiciously to Robin, "The broken lock on the door has always seemed odd to me. When the troll pushed its way in, it forced the door open, as far as it could. We kept moving further into the bathroom, so how did the door end up locked?" "The wind, maybe. The wind," Ron blurted. But Harry clapped a hand over his mouth. Hermione watched their flustered faces and awkward postures, and once she'd calmed, her sharp mind clicked into place. Her eyes lit up. It was them. They were behind it. Robin pulled Harry aside, saving Ron from the spotlight. "I think they were probably looking for me and happened to see the troll go into the girls' bathroom. Trying to help, they locked the door and went to fetch a professor." "Yes, that's it," Harry nodded. "We meant to lock the door from the inside, but the doorknob was bewitched. I got zapped, couldn't stop my hand, and the lock broke. If I'd known you two were hiding in the girls' bathroom, I never would have locked it," Ron added anxiously. "Oh, Robin, weren't you supposed to go back to the tower with Neville to change? How did you end up in the girls' bathroom?" Harry asked, making Robin flush a little. Robin rubbed the tip of his nose and explained what had happened in front of the fat lady's portrait. "When Professor Quirrell announced the troll in the dungeons and Percy led us upstairs, Parvati kept shouting 'girls' bathroom' to Ron and me. That's how we ended up there." With everything cleared up, the four felt much closer. They chatted and laughed as they climbed to the 8th floor. "Password?" the plump portrait asked. "Pig's snout," replied Robin. The portrait swung aside, and they entered a common room, crowded with students carrying plates piled high with food, trading stories and laughter. Parvati and Lavender sat squeezed into one armchair near the entrance. When they saw the four arrive, they hurried over. "Hermione, are you all right?" Parvati asked, worried at the state of Hermione's tangled hair, dirty robes, and tears. "I'm fine. I'm going to the dormitory to change," Hermione said, glancing briefly at Lavender, who was babbling her thanks to Robin, and then pushing through the noisy room toward the girls' dormitory. 51. Old Bat makes up school rules. "I specifically saved 8 fruit-flavored macarons. Robin, want to share them with me?" Lavender bounded up, eyes shining as she waved the box. Robin gently pried Lavender's hand off his shoulder. Miss Brown, you don't have to thank me so much. Even if Filch were in trouble, I'd cast a spell to help." Lavender Brown, pretty, dramatic, full of life. Argus stooped, balding, bug-eyed, a tiresome old man. The two weren't exactly comparable, and Lavender, who'd taken a step back, flicked from gratitude to indignation. "Ron, do you want one?" "I want a chicken leg," Ron said, recoiling. "Not something so sweet it'll rot my teeth." "You will," Lavender decided, hauling Ron into the armchair, prying his mouth open and stuffing a pink and white macaron in. Before he'd even chewed the first, she shoved in another. "Robin, at first I didn't understand why you mentioned Filch, but now I know. Are you going to save Ron?" Lavender added with a conspiratorial grin. Harry's cheeks ached from watching their brutality. "No, I think I'll go back to the dormitory and change first." "Same here," Hermione said at the same time. Under Ron's horrified, sticky stare, the two of them left, leaving Ron to be force-fed the rest of the box. He brushed his teeth 5 times that night and still couldn't get rid of the cloying sweetness. Even his sleep hiccups smelled faintly of fruit. Robin grinned inwardly at the thought of having used Filch as a shield. Otherwise, he might have been the one waking up with fruit-flavored hiccups. He also wondered, casually, whether a troll's injury would affect its intelligence. Once his roommates were definitely asleep, Robin slipped into the sea of consciousness. He glanced at the giant Rubik's Cube and found the mountain giant totem lying unconscious in a purple square. A thought later, and the square floated over. He reached out and prodded the totem. The light screen projected its details. Name, none. Species, mountain giant. Level, a personality. Likes raw meat, dull-witted, irritable. Physical condition, weak, fractured skull, subcutaneous bleeding in head. Treatment period, 4 months. Skills, mountain collapse. Stomp 3 times to produce powerful shockwaves in a 5-meter radius, disrupting enemy balance and attack speed. Giant club swing. Grip a wooden club and increase swing force by 10-fold. Uproot mountain and lift tripod. Can lift objects 3 times its own weight. Magic power, 3,500. Combat power, 1,000. All physical attacks, Robin muttered. Still, giant club swing looked useful. Wood had mentioned the second Saturday of November for the training assessment. That skill might hit bludgers if the substitute could get up to the aerial pitch in time. He named the mountain giant Big Dummy, let his consciousness fade back, and slept to the soundtrack of Ron's occasional hiccuping. November brought worsening weather to Hogwarts. Light snow every 3 days, heavy flurries every 5. Even on clear days, the Black Lake's thick ice held fast, and the mountains around the school were wrapped in a cold, gloomy mist. Every morning, Hagrid came out in his moleskin coat with a huge bamboo broom to sweep the Quidditch pitch and the broom shed free of snow. Despite it all, Oliver Wood ramped up training from 3 sessions a week to 5. If anyone deserved the title of the most competitive Quidditch fanatic at Hogwarts, it was him. Word leaked, as it always did, about the new students who'd been seen on the pitch. Nobody had actually watched Robin or Harry play, but everyone was privately betting on who would fall off their broom first and split their backside in 3. Robin scowled every time a conversation turned to butts. People were really obsessed. During this stretch, Harry more than once admitted he wouldn't have gotten through so much homework without Hermione. The professor's assignments, poetry, history of magic memorization, copying spells, cataloging rare plants, were easy for Robin after that much practice at studying. Time slipped by until the afternoon before the match, when there were no lessons and the whole castle seemed keyed up. After lunch, Hermione hauled the 3 boys out into the courtyard with a large cloth bag. "Guess what's inside?" she teased, shaking it. Robin, tucking his handwritten notebook into his sleeve, guessed without looking. Glass jars with blue flames. Hermione deflated like a punctured balloon until she pulled 4 canning jars out of the bag. Blue fire danced in each. "I found this in a miscellany in the library. Come on, let's form a circle, stand with our backs to the flames to warm up, and cheer on our 2 players." "You're cheering for one," Robin reminded her. "I'm a substitute. I'll probably stay on the ground unless something happens." "Even so," Hermione said, pulling out a bright, steady flame and urging Robin to stand with his back to it. Harry and Ron did the same. The 4 of them warmed in a small, protected circle, swapping gossip. Seamus had tried ice skating on the Black Lake and gone flat on his face. Neville's toad, Trevor, had hopped into the dungeons, leaving a trail of toad droppings. and Fred and George had bombarded Professor Quirrell with snowballs, making him clutch his turban and run back into the castle muttering. A gust of wind swirled the snow into a blinding veil, and when it passed, they saw Professor Snape striding toward them in his black robes. He limped slightly, favoring one leg, and his hollow, cold eyes swept over the four students. "Hermione, is there a school rule against students lighting fires to keep warm?" Harry asked nervously. "No written one," Hermione said, stepping in front of the flames to shield them. "But whether Professor Snape has his own rule book in his head is another matter." Snape stopped by their circle. "Potter, what are you holding?" he asked icily. Harry clutched the book to his chest. "Professor, it's Quidditch Through the Ages." "Potter, you know books from the library are not to be taken outside the castle?" Snape snapped. "Because of your ignorance, Gryffindor will lose 5 points. Hand it to me." Robin watched Snape accept the book with a tight smile and thought, not for the first time, that the old bat would make up rules to win the House Cup. Engaging in yellow is the primary productive force. Engaging in yellow is the primary productive force. Harry loved that book. Every night before bed, he read it for half an hour and hated to give it up. But Professor Snape was not to be trifled with. He pinched a corner of the book, and with a sharp flick, it landed in his hand. "You three," Snape began, eyes narrowing as he scanned them for hiding places. "Professor, my head hurts when I read. I wouldn't carry a book around outside class," Ron protested. "All the books I borrowed are in the common room in the dormitory," Hermione added. "And you, Lestrange?" "Me? Of course I don't have one." Before Robin could finish, a navy blue, palm-sized handwritten notebook slid out of his sleeve and hit the floor. He bent to pick it up, but Snape was already glaring at the first page. His pupils narrowed in surprise. With a sharp snap, he slammed it shut. "Lestrange, because of your curiosity, Gryffindor loses 10 points. Hermione, Harry, Ron." Only after Snape limped away did the three of them finally ask Robin what was in the little book. Robin was speechless. Wasn't the Western world supposed to be open and free? He had only copied a few things about men and women. Why the big fuss? "Robin, are you going to tell us or not? If you don't, I'll have to resort to torture," Hermione said, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Torture me?" Robin raised an eyebrow. Hermione smiled. "You've been warned." She ran to the edge of the path, plunged her hand into a snowdrift, counted very deliberately to 30, and pulled it out again. Robin couldn't stand it. The cold hand down his back made him spill the truth. He'd copied material about trolls and drawn some gory troll dissection diagrams. After that mess in the girls' bathroom, Hermione had no patience for trolls and didn't press further. Harry and Ron let it go too. That evening in the Gryffindor common room, the four of them sat by the window doing Charms homework. Robin finished first, then Hermione. 5 minutes later, Harry and Ron, under the pretense of checking answers, copied theirs. When Harry checked his answers, he frowned. "Do you think if I go to Snape and plead, he'll give my book back?" he asked. "No. If you go, he'll probably make up some new ridiculous rule and take another 5 points," Ron said. "That's exactly what I was thinking," Hermione agreed. With 2 vetoes, Harry turned hopefully to Robin. Robin slid his homework into his Charms textbook and stood. "If there's another professor nearby, Snape can't just invent rules on the spot. We should go to the staff room together, get another professor to back us up." Harry's face lit up. "Yes, that's it, Robin, you. I'm coming too. I still have a use for my little notebook," Robin said. They crept down to the staff room and knocked, but there was no answer. Robin knocked again and again. "Maybe Snape isn't here. Want to try to find another professor who can come to the staff room basement with us?" Harry whispered, ready to give up. Robin pulled out a crystal ball, muttered under his breath, and rubbed it. When he finished his divination, his body twitched as if he'd seen something absurd. "I see him," he said. "Professor Snape, dressed all in red, right here in the staff room. There's another figure next to him. Your book and my notebook are on the small stool." "All red?" Harry blinked. In the months since term started, Snape had only ever worn black, but Robin's divination had been accurate before. "Either it's right, or we'll know in a moment if it isn't. Let's just open the door." They pushed the door open a crack and peered in. What they saw made them both freeze. Snape sat on a low chair, his black robes hitched up to his knees. One leg, gloved in red, looked as if a wild animal had torn it, skin and flesh ripped open, bloody and raw. Filch stood nearby with a tray. He handed Snape a bottle of antiseptic and a roll of bandages. "Brainless idiot," Snape muttered. "How could you possibly handle 3 heads at once?" "Severus, you're too badly hurt. Madame Pomfrey should dress that," Filch objected. "No need, Filch." Harry was so shocked he hiccuped. He clapped a hand over his mouth, but the sound had already given them away. Snape's head snapped up. "Who's there?" Snape yanked his robes down to cover his injured leg. "Professor, Harry and I would like our things back. If you want to look at the notebook for academic reasons, I'll let you examine it," Robin blurted. "Out! Now!" Snape's mouth twitched with anger. He snatched both the handwritten notebook and the thick book from the stool and hurled them toward the door. That was all the excuse they needed. Robin shoved Harry aside and flung the door open. The 2 things, the thick book and the thin notebook, hit the corridor with a thud. Harry bent to pick them up and froze. The stick figure drawings inside Robin's notebook were not troll dissections. They were 2 naked, oddly proportioned little figures pressed together, their limbs intertwined. The smaller had her legs wrapped around the other's thigh, their faces close. The sketch left nothing to the imagination. Robin, realizing Harry was staring, yanked the notebook back and slammed the door shut. Before he could come up with an explanation, Harry asked in a bewildered voice, "Are those 2 doing artificial respiration?" Robin's eyes went wide. Then, quick as lightning, he nodded. Yes, exactly. Artificial respiration practice. A ready-made excuse, no reason not to use it." Hermione and Ron weren't the only ones who noticed Robin's sudden interest in practical technique. "Robin, no wonder you always ace practicals," Harry said. "Let's go. Be careful Snape doesn't limp out after us to pick a fight and dock more house points," Robin warned. "Right," Harry said. They hurried back to the Gryffindor common room with the books. "Did you get them back?" Hermione asked. Robin waved the notebook for a moment, then remembered the staff room door and quickly hid it back in his sleeve. "Cool. Snape's notoriously grim. How did you manage it?" Ron asked, eyes wide. Robin sipped his juice and told them the general story, leaving out the contents of the notebook. "Snape's leg is injured? No wonder he was limping earlier. I hope it gets properly treated, maybe even a bit worse," Ron said with a mean-spirited chuckle. The image of Snape limping down the classroom aisle made Ron snicker. Even with an injury like that, he still wants to dock Gryffindor points. Compared with Ron's gloating and Hermione's stunned silence, Harry's face was the most serious. The wound on his leg wasn't from a falling tile, it was an animal bite. Do you understand what that implies? On Halloween night, when Ron and I left the main group to look for Robin, I saw Snape heading upstairs, Hermione added. Think about it, Harry said. Quirrell told us a troll had broken into the dungeons, but Snape, a professor, went upstairs. What's upstairs? Especially that right-hand corridor on the 4th floor. Harry's meaning was plain. Snape could be using the troll as a diversion, drawing attention while he slips up to the 4th floor corridor to take something the three-headed dog is guarding. Honestly, I agree with Harry, Ron said. Given Snape, nothing he does would surprise me. But what is that three-headed dog guarding that makes it worth all this trouble? No, he wouldn't steal, Hermione protested. Snape's bad, but he's not a thief. Hermione, you trust every professor by default, Ron teased. Robin, what do you think? All 4 pairs of bright, intent eyes turned to Robin. He finished his apple juice, put the cup down, and said softly, If Harry's right, then Argus Filch and Madame Pomfrey are almost certainly Snape's accomplices. Eh? The 3 of them blurted the same shocked sound. Think back, Robin went on. Filch was the one helping Snape with his leg. Snape mentioned something about 3 heads, and Filch suggested he see Madame Pomfrey. A trained healer like Pomfrey would notice if that wound was odd, if someone's been bitten by a large animal. Robin's casual observation undercut Harry's neat single-man conspiracy. Well, a 3-person conspiracy is a bit less likely than a solo job, Harry conceded. I can believe Filch might be involved, but Pomfrey? No way, Ron said. Hermione straightened her chin. See? The scholar knows. If I'd been there in the staff room, I'd have been the first to call it out. Robin thought, if Hermione had been there, she'd definitely have figured it out, and I'd be socially dead. He merely smiled to himself. After a little more talk about what the three-headed dog might be guarding, the conversation dwindled. It was late, so they packed up and headed to their dormitory. The next morning at 11, Robin and his friends, broomsticks in hand, walked toward the stadium locker rooms. Suddenly, Marcus Flint, the Slytherin captain, blocked their way with a handful of teammates in tow. Robin glanced at Flint, prominent forehead, a mop of unruly hair, a sharp, trenchant look, and silently assessed the man, surly, ready to pick a fight. Flint began to sneer, picking at Wood until the Gryffindor captain's veins stood out. When Flint crossed an invisible line, Wood grabbed his collar and cocked a fist. "Wood," Robin warned loudly, stepping in. "If you hit him now, you'll fall right into his trap." "Buck-toothed freak. Who are you calling a buck-toothed freak?" Flint snapped as Wood hesitated. Flint shoved Wood's hand away and grabbed Robin by the front of his robes, raising his fist. "If you want to keep talking, do it somewhere safe," he jeered, smirking. "I can see birds on the far treetops. My eyesight's brilliant. Hit me? I'm only a substitute. Trading me for one of your chasers would be a bargain." His face crimson with anger, Flint pulled back his arm but hissed, "Worthless trash." "Who are you calling worthless?" Robin asked flatly, looking at him as if he were already dead. Flint, dense and arrogant, snapped back. "You who just opened your mouth. If you didn't want to be called worthless, your short-lived parents should have been smashed to death by stones." He grinned sickly, expecting to wound. Robin's blood chilled for a second. Then he answered evenly, almost pitying him. "If insulting the dead makes you happy, go right on. But next time you go out in public, pick midday, because sooner or later you're bound to be struck by lightning." Flint's eyes bulged. If Pusey and Bletchley hadn't restrained him, he might have thrown a punch. Madam Hooch's sharp voice cut across the tense circle. "Oh my goodness, both teams are here. The match is about to start. Get to your locker rooms and change." "Robin Lestrange, I'll remember you," Flint gritted through his teeth. "I'll remember you too, buck-toothed man." Robin shot back, and Flint, with the teacher watching, couldn't answer with anything worse than a glare. He let his side off, still muttering. "Don't worry, child," Madam Hooch said to Robin with a wry look. "Marcus Flint wouldn't dare do anything to you." "I think he should be afraid of me," Robin replied calmly, which only made Madam Hooch look more puzzled. Inside the Gryffindor locker room, they changed into their bright red Quidditch robes. Captain Wood gave his usual rousing speech. "All right, lads and lasses, this is what we've been working for all year. Show them what Gryffindor's made of." 3 claps later, he sent them out to the pitch. "Robin, stay here and handle logistics," he told him. "Okay, no problem," Robin said. He pulled a small stool to the side, drew back the heavy curtain, and settled with a pair of binoculars to watch. The stands had been raised, and even so people still stood. It was clear the whole school had come to see the match. High up in the highest row, Robin spotted Hermione, Ron, Neville, Seamus, and Dean. They were holding a huge banner, a tattered bedsheet that, embarrassingly, still bore a urine stain from Scabbers. Dean, who could draw, had painted a majestic lion across the sheet to cover the worst of the stain, and Hermione had charmed the paint to glitter like fairy lights. The banner proclaimed, in proud, if patched-together letters, "Gryffindor will win." 54. Knocked out front teeth. Madam Hooch finished her opening remarks and blew her silver whistle. At the sound, 15 broomsticks shot into the sky like rockets and leveled off about 15 meters above the ground. Red and green streaked through the air as the 2 teams took their positions. Lee Jordan, ever the exuberant commentator, described the play with animated relish. "Beautiful. Chaser Johnson of Gryffindor snatches the quaffle and rockets forward. Flint of Slytherin closes in, but she passes to Spinnet. What a return pass. And Johnson takes it back, shakes off Flint like an eagle, fakes the keeper Bletchley, and it's a goal. 10 points to Gryffindor. Johnson's skill is as captivating as she is, truly a sight to behold." "Jordan," Professor McGonagall's warning came low and sharp. Lee only grinned and went on, spinning flirtatious commentary about the Gryffindor chasers that kept half the crowd amused and the professors exasperated. An hour of play had left the score close. From the game reserve, even using a telescope to watch, the action felt a little distant. Robin had been sitting so long his backside was numb. He stood up to stretch and fetch some water. Through the glass, he saw Hagrid walking toward Ron, but otherwise, the stands were oddly subdued. Just as Robin took a drink, a cry cut through the air. Fred had fallen from his broom and hurt his arm. "Blimey, Madam Hooch was quick with a spell," Wood said after helping Fred into the changing tent. If she hadn't acted, falling from 15 meters could have been disastrous. George squinted at the injured arm. That bludger was off its usual course. It packed far more force than normal, nearly tried to kill me earlier. "Don't start blaming the balls for poor play," George shot back, although his hands were busy. He had Fred lie down and began to work the arm. After some practiced manipulations, pressing, positioning, and a firm pull, there was a sharp crack. George let go, smoothing Fred's shoulders. "Done. Back in place first try." "George is the best in the world," Fred groaned happily, then grimaced. "Now can you please put your foot back in your shoe? The smell is going to kill me." George grinned and grabbed a sweat-soaked sock, about to stuff it in Fred's mouth. Wood slapped his hand away. "Behave. This is a match. Robin, get ready. You're going on." Robin's grin was instant. Time for battle. "No, Wood, let me," Fred protested, but Wood had already pushed him and Robin toward the pitch. "If you try to play like this, you'll only drag the team down," he said to Fred. Fred sighed and conceded. "All right, but keep an eye on the bludgers. They were weird." George nodded without much attention and shoved Robin into place. Katie Bell, cheeks still pink from the last time they'd trained together, came over to offer a shy smile and a few quiet words of encouragement. Ever since Robin had saved her during that training session, she'd been embarrassingly flustered whenever he spoke to her. "Thanks, Belle," Robin said, feeling oddly buoyed. "I'm not nervous, just excited." The whistle blew after halftime, and Robin mounted his broom with the others. Not far off, a flash of gold, no bigger than a walnut, beat its tiny silver wings past Pusey's ear. He was focused on the quaffle and didn't see it. Harry, watching, leaned forward and surged after the snitch. For a heartbeat, it looked like Harry might have it, but a bludger was already hurtling toward the back of his head. Higgs had seen the snitch too and cut in parallel, but Harry's flying was a touch superior. He left Higgs behind. Marcus Flint, however, bore his protruding front teeth in a threatening grimace and angled straight for Harry as if to ram him. Robin saw Flint's intent and sprinted his broom to intercept the dangerous bludger. He swung his bat in a high, practiced arc, an upward, powerful strike aimed to deflect, and tapped the bludger cleanly. The ball shot skyward like a firecracker, climbed, then arced with perfect precision and streaked back down toward Flint with a low, hissing trail. "Good heavens! I have never seen anything like it. Has Merlin himself sent this bludger to punish Marcus Flint for his foul play?" Lee Jordan cried, half joking. "Jordan, I'm warning you." Professor McGonagall cut him off. Flint, hearing his name and the mention of a bludger, glanced over his shoulder. The black ball, trailing a smear of soot, slammed into his face. There was a sickening crunch. His two front teeth and part of his nasal bone took the brunt. The teeth broke free and tumbled from over 10 meters above down onto the grass. They were crooked and yellowed, and a faint foul smell hung about them, enough to send a small line of ants scattering. Flint clapped his hands to his mouth and nose, but crimson seeped between his fingers. Madam Hooch's whistle cut through the chaos. She flew straight to Flint's side. "To the school hospital, now! Substitute on!" As medics rushed in and the substitute chaser slid up to take Flint's place, the stadium buzzed with a different kind of energy, equal parts shock and triumph, while Flint was helped off the pitch, bloodied and suddenly very human. 55. Out-of-control broomstick, Robin shot forward, fanning the flames of taunt. Yes, Higgs isn't a match for Harry in vision or flying. Whether your chaser is a substitute or it doesn't matter. And besides, Madame Pomfrey is excellent. A few potions and your nasal bone will be set and healed, and your new front teeth will be white and straight again. "Robin," Madame Hooch barked. Robin, you did it on purpose." Flint, his front teeth gone and his mouth full of blood, spoke with a lisp and had to swallow every few words. The metallic tang of blood in his throat was nauseating. "Don't be ridiculous. Everyone saw it. I hit the bludger from below and it shot straight up. My injury has nothing to do with me. Not a single nut," Robin said, his eyes flickering. You can't be blaming me." "Flint, Robin isn't lying. Everyone saw what happened. Go to the hospital. We'll put in a substitute. No, my mouth and nose are injured, not my arms or eyes. I can still play. Flint tried to prove it, gripping his broom with one hand and doing a few flashy backflips. When he landed, he realized he'd been carried 5 meters away from where he'd started. Confusion flashed across his face. Robin glanced at him, expression unreadable. Fine, I'll respect your choice. Madame Hooch flew over, waved her wand, staunched the bleeding enough for Flint to stop spitting blood, then blew her silver whistle. Red and green streaked across the sky again. Harry, having lost sight of the golden snitch, was now competing with Higgs to spot it first. Flint, having learned nothing, used his intentional collision trick and knocked Alicia Spinett's quaffle loose. He grabbed it with one hand and charged toward the Gryffindor hoops. Robin wouldn't let him get away. He hit a bludger from left to right. The black ball shot out over 10 meters, stalled, then curved to smash into Flint's forearm. Katie Bell took advantage, snatched the quaffle, dodged, and threw it through Slytherin's hoop. Flint barked at Robin, who raised an eyebrow, shrugged innocence, and made the man grind his teeth with rage. From then on, each time Flint tried to foul someone, a bludger found him. 20 minutes later, exhausted and still bleeding, Madame Hooch dragged him back to the changing rooms. His replacement was a small blonde fellow who rode his broom unsteadily, clearly a novice. Having neutralized Flint, Robin turned his attention back to his own broom. It had begun to shake violently up and down. He gripped the handle with his upper body pressed tight, legs crossed, and locked around the shaft to stay on. 10 seconds passed, and the tremor didn't let up. He remembered the Nimbus 2000 manual. No vibration massage feature. He pushed with his legs and pulled with his hands, trying to change direction, but the broom would not respond. Quirrell must be cursing it. Whoosh! Whoosh! One wave of motion hadn't settled before another rose. A bludger released from somewhere around Wood's head and darted straight for Robin. He sensed it and swung his bat, but the teacher's stand was too far away for the black ball to strike Quirrell. It only glanced off. The bouncing continued. 2 bludgers alternated targeting him. Without the magic creature skill buff, he wouldn't have lasted. On the other side of the field, Harry had seen the snitch again and was streaking after it. Higgs stayed right on his tail. As everyone's attention turned to the 2 seekers, a red figure began to bounce at the edge of the pitch. No one noticed except one person. Hagrid, I think Robin's in trouble. Lend me your telescope, Hermione said, snatching it before Hagrid could answer. Through the lens, she saw Robin, one hand clamped on his broom, the other swinging a bat at smoking bludgers, his broom shaking as if it wanted to throw him. From the stands, she could also see someone sitting at the very top, holding a telescope and staring toward the pitch, and beyond that she could make out Snape, his lips moving, staring at his friend's broom as if reciting a charm. Robin gritted his teeth. He had crossed his legs, locked them, pressed his chest to the handle, and clutched the shaft with one arm. With the other hand, he extended an index finger and wrote in the air. O.P., Hermione, watching, mimicked the motion and finished the thought aloud. Opposite, Professor. Opposite, Professor. She saw Snape intently watching the cursed broom and realized what was happening. For the sake of the house cup, Snape really had no bottom line, she thought, frowning. She put down the telescope and slid low along the back of the stand to act. Hagrid kept the telescope and continued to watch Robin. Harry was only a few dozen meters from Robin when he felt vaguely that something was wrong. He flew closer and saw the broom bucking under his friend. What's wrong? He called. Don't worry about me. Hurry and chase the snitch. It just buzzed over my head. If you go now, you still have a chance, Robin urged. Hermione had already acted. All Robin could do was hold on, fend off bludgers, and hope the curse would stop. Harry wanted to reach over and pull Robin onto his own broom, but as he got close, Robin's broom shot up a meter and shoved him back. When Harry approached again, Robin stopped him. Harry, don't worry. Higgs is about to… okay, he's caught up. Tsk, up and down, turning the pitch into a circus. And you, Harry, I'll catch the snitch before you. Higgs taunted as he zipped toward the golden streak of light. Robin thought, a circus? I don't believe you didn't notice my broom was broken. Harry, go after it. He swung his arm and sent another bludger away, hard enough that Harry believed his friend could handle himself. Nodding, Harry pushed his broom forward and dove back into the chase. "Robin, give me your broom handle. I'll pull you onto mine," Wood called, swooping over as he noticed the trouble. Bang! A black bludger ricocheted off. George flew over, rubbing his wrist. "Hiss! It's killing my wrist." Fred wasn't kidding. "The bludger's acting up," he grumbled. "Wood, it's no use. As soon as someone else gets close, my broom goes wild. Besides, you're the keeper," Robin protested. "Big brother, the keeper doesn't guard the hoops. Why are you buzzing about up here?" Came a teasing voice. "Harry and Higgs are right on the snitch. Everyone stop and see who gets it first." Even so, Wood turned back and headed for Gryffindor's hoops. George stayed to help Robin deal with the rogue bludgers. He was getting carried away with the game and let out a howl-like roar. Robin wondered, amused, whether George was there to play or to protect him. 3 minutes later, someone in the stands screamed. Snape's black robes caught fire. Instantly, Robin's broom steadied. 2 smoking black bludgers shot off toward Johnson and Pusey instead. "George, split up," Robin said, sitting taller now that the immediate danger had passed. Are you sure your broom won't act up again?" George asked, disappointed. He clearly hadn't had his fill of smacking bludgers. "Definitely," George answered, and with one hand, Robin wrestled his broom around to face a charging bludger. Bang! He swung his bat hard and sent the black ball flying. It rose several meters, hung for a breath, then dove toward a green-robed chaser. Thud! Higgs took a solid hit on the back of the head. The pain sent him off balance. He and his broom lurched wildly. Harry used the opening, shook free from Higgs's protective screen, and dove toward the glittering golden streak. Harry landed on his chest, clutching his mouth and retching in a choking, panicked motion. A golden ball with silver wings, slimed with a transparent sticky film, rolled into his palm. He held up the snitch and shouted, "I caught it! I caught the golden snitch!" Everyone in the stands jumped to their feet except the Slytherins. Lee Jordan, breathless with excitement, blurted into his commentary box, "Oh my goodness, first-year Harry Potter, 8, oh no, caught the golden snitch. That's 150 points. Gryffindor wins, 190 to 90. Oh yeah!" He ignored Professor McGonagall's sharp look, tossed aside his script, and raced into the stands to celebrate. The match that had started in a roar ended to applause that shook the stadium. "That's cheating. The bludgers only hit Slytherin. Cheating!" Flint bellowed indignantly as he was carried off on a stretcher, but his complaints went unheard. After all, the bludgers had hit Fred, too. With the victory secured, Wood beamed. He planned a little victory celebration with the team, but the 2 new players had slipped away, and a quick search turned up nothing. He gave up on the party. Robin and the others gathered inside the game reserve cabin to sort out how his broom had gone berserk. "It was Snape. I saw it," Hermione began, flushed and indignant. "I read about jinxes. Eyes are the key." Snape's eyes were fixed on Robin's broom. His eyelids didn't close. His mouth moved. He was muttering a spell. "He's horrible enough to cheat and hurt students just to win the house cup," Ron snapped. "Hagrid, what do you think?" Hagrid asked, fingering Fang's long fur. 5 pairs of bright, eager eyes looked to the black-haired, black-eyed young man. Robin took a reluctant bite of the sandwich Hagrid had made, some kind of fishy, greasy thing, and grimaced. It was too salty, too sweet, and faintly rank. Ugh! He swallowed it with difficulty, downed a long glass of water, and said faintly, "Hermione, does that book mention a counter-jinx?" "Yes," Hermione said. "The counter-jinx also hinges on the eyes. The caster's gaze must be fixed on the jinxed person or object." "Wait, do you mean Snape was casting a counter-jinx on your broom?" Her eyes widened. "But as soon as Snape's robes caught fire, your broom went back to normal and the bludgers stopped chasing you," Ron said, still convinced Snape had been behind the jinx. "Hermione, tell us exactly what you did in the professor's stand. Don't skip any details." "Okay." Hermione looked up, recalling the events. "I crept along the back of the stands and made my way to the professor's box. I squeezed down the narrow aisle and accidentally bumped into Professor Quirrell. He went headfirst into the front row. I didn't even stop to apologize. I rushed on. I knelt behind Snape, pulled out my vinewood wand, and murmured a spell. A small ball of bright blue flame shot from my wand and ignited the hem of Snape's robes. Then I slipped away." She lowered her eyes and looked at Robin. "Opposite Professor was the hint you wrote to me. So you knew the person jinxing your broom was in the professor's stand. Cool, someone muttered. Your broom was shaking like that, and you still figured out where the jinx came from. I'd have been off after 2 shakes. Quirrell, Robin, wasn't it Professor Quirrell? Harry, who had been silent until now, let the words out. When my broom was acting up, I felt 2 strange forces from the professor's box. One tried to make the broom shake more violently, the other to calm it. I saw Hermione with binoculars looking at me from a distance. In a moment of panic, I scribbled opposite professor as a hint. Hermione said she bumped Quirrell and then burned the hem of Snape's robe. So both of them were sending out forces, one a jinx and one a counter-jinx. But who was doing which? Robin had read the original novel and knew Quirrell was the jinxer, but he had no proof, so he steered the conversation cautiously. It's hard to tell. Both Quirrell and Snape know a lot about the dark arts, Hermione said, frowning. It's not hard to pick, Ron said, sipping fruit tea and giving Quirrell the benefit of the doubt. Quirrell taught us counter-jinxes in defense against the dark arts. I'm siding with Quirrell. Don't forget, Quirrell also taught the dark arts in defense against the dark arts. Otherwise, why would Hermione be borrowing books about the dark arts from Madame Pince? And I remember Robin saying Quirrell had done a lot of research on trolls. Now that I think about it, his behavior after he saw the troll was very odd, Harry said, his eyes bright. How was it odd? Good job, lad. You're starting to put things together. You're even learning to do extended analysis. Take Hagrid, for example. If he met a big mastiff, he'd be excited, want to study it, and maybe keep it as a pet. But Quirrell, when he ran into a troll he'd researched and felt confident dealing with, he was flustered and terrified. He could barely walk straight. On Halloween, when Ron and I were going to find a professor for help, we just reached the stairs when we saw Quirrell coming down. Maybe the troll that night was a diversion he set up to steal whatever's under that loose floorboard by using that 3-headed dog. The more Harry thought about it, the more he suspected Quirrell wanted whatever lay beneath the floorboard. He still couldn't understand why Snape had gone up to the 4th floor that night, though. It wouldn't be out of character for Quirrell. He's always been timid. Wait, how do you know about Fluffy? Hagrid put his teacup down with a heavy clunk, and for the first time that evening, looked unusually serious. Fluffy, the other 3 exclaimed in unison. Yes, his name's Fluffy. I raised him. Last year I spent all my savings buying him from a Greek bloke. I raised him proper, made him magnificent. Dumbledore went on about him from the moment he saw him. He's proud to be borrowed as a guard. Sure enough, nobody could refuse Dumbledore's persuasive charm. Hagrid, what is Fluffy guarding? Hermione asked eagerly. That's top secret, I can't say. But Quirrell tried to steal it, Harry said. No way. Quirrell's a professor at this school. He wouldn't steal. Then why did he put a dark arts jinx on Robin's broomstick? Ron pressed. I'd like to know that too, Robin said. Is a Ravenclaw diadem worth Quirrell changing his target and using dark magic? Hagrid looked cornered. He stood up and, irritated, snapped. I'm telling you, you're all wrong. I don't know why Robin's broom went wild, but I know in my bones that Quirinus Quirrell wouldn't want to hurt anyone. He doesn't have the intention, let alone the courage. Listen, all 4 of you, no more poking your noses where they don't belong. Forget the corridor on the far right of the 4th floor. Forget Fluffy the 3-headed dog. Forget that he's guarding anything. That's a secret between Albus Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Who's Nicholas Flamel? Hermione seized on the crucial name. Hagrid's beard trembled with anger at himself for speaking so freely. He chased them away, furious, and ordered them not to meddle with Fluffy again. The 4 of them argued all the way back to the castle. As Robin passed through the entrance hall, Quirrell, wrapped in a thick purple turban, his spine trembling and his voice all flattery, glided over. He babbled about caring for students' health, and then, in that stammering way of his, brought up the old curse again. L. Lestrange, I'm not sure if the broom's trouble is linked to the curse for secretly taking something that doesn't belong to you, but I can tell you how to break it. You just need to. Robin cut him off. Professor, this curse has nothing to do with me. My broom was taken by Professor McGonagall. I expect the repair department will tell us exactly why it went wild in a few days. Quirrell opened his mouth as if to protest, then fell silent as Robin and the others left the entrance hall and entered the Great Hall. Over dinner, Hermione leaned over and asked, "Robin, did Quirrell really think you stole something?" "The Ravenclaw diadem," Ron said between bites of chicken. "The diadem of wisdom? I read about it. Disappeared in the early Middle Ages. Thousands of students have asked the Grey Lady about it. Why would Quirrell think you took it?" Robin shrugged. "Who knows what's going on in his head? Let's not waste time on him now. Eating comes first." He piled roasted potatoes and meat on his plate and ate with exaggerated appetite, as if he'd completely forgotten the dark arts jinx. But he hadn't. That night, after his roommates were asleep, Robin sank his consciousness into the sea of consciousness and rifled through mental cabinets for potion recipes suitable for revenge. When his eyes tired from the old parchment scrolls, he withdrew and slept, planning to continue the search the next night. By day, he attended classes. In the evenings, he trained. During breaks, he guarded against any more of Quirrell's mischief. At night, he hunted for recipes. The routine lasted 2 full weeks. Finally, on a Friday night in late November, after Harry and Ron had gone to bed, Robin dove into the sea of consciousness as usual. He clutched 4 parchment scrolls and muttered, "If these don't do it, I'll have to brew the continuous bad luck and the sores on the head and pus from the feet potions so someone can taste what continuous misfortune feels like." Quirrell had made life miserable for him for weeks. Eating, there'd been glass shards in his mashed potatoes. Borrowing a book, he'd found a dried insect carcass in the flyleaf. Walking, crash, a lamp had fallen at his feet. Getting water, boom, a pipe burst and drenched him. Robin had an average of 4 or 5 unlucky incidents a day. In Gryffindor, he'd long since knocked Neville Longbottom off the top of the clumsiness list. Because of all that, suspicion among the 4 tilted sharply toward Quirrell. He really did seem the sort who would engineer such things. Now Robin sat cross-legged, unrolling scrolls one by one. The first was the Fiji Boils potion. The drinker would develop shingles that didn't itch, but caused excruciating, bone-deep pain. The second was an anticoagulant brew. Any wound would bleed uncontrollably for 7 days. The third promised an intelligence boost. Triple the IQ in 3 days, but a small note warned that adding an herb called purple mustard reversed the effect. None of them suited what Robin wanted. He put those 3 back and, with a steadying breath, unrolled the final scroll. Reading the effects, especially the way they combined, he knew at once this was the one. Chapter 58, Sneak Away to Hogsmeade. The potion's name on the parchment read Murphy Eris, split into 2 parts, Murphy's and Eris. The upper component, Murphy's, primarily induced nightmares. The lower, Eris, brought out deeply buried fears. Taken together, within a month, the drinker would be trapped in an endless cycle of dream terrors, and if their mind was damaged enough, hallucinations could follow, possibly irreversible. Robin frowned. The recipe wasn't especially complicated. The real problem was getting the ingredients. Apart from the 2-eared grass and a vial of self-heal infusion, there was nothing he could use in his trunk. How could he gather the rest? Ask Professor Sprout for help? No. Hogwarts rules forbade first-years from brewing potions privately, and Sprout would report anything suspicious. Sneak into Snape's private storeroom? Also impossible. When the trio brewed polyjuice, they'd stolen a scrap of African tree snake skin from the shopkeeper known as the Old Bat, and she had known something was missing the moment she glanced at the storeroom. If a dozen items vanished at once, the search would be relentless. Robin slumped onto his bed, limbs splayed out in a big X. Can't ask, can't steal, so I have to buy them, he thought. Of course, buy them. He remembered Hogsmeade, the only all-wizard village near the school. Any busy wizarding street would have a herb shop. With enough galleons, he could buy anything. The original books said Hogsmeade sat up among the mountains above the snow line, where it snowed all year and the temperature never rose above freezing. School rules allowed 3rd years and above, with a guardian's signed permission to visit Hogsmeade on certain days. Robin was a 1st year and an orphan. He met neither condition. But he had the Whomping Willow, Little Green. The tunnel beneath Little Green's roots led straight to the Shrieking Shack in Hogsmeade. Having roughly planned his shopping trip, Robin let the sea of potion theory drift away. With wind hissing outside the window, he fell asleep and woke before dawn. He dressed quietly and left a note on his desk. "I'm going to read. Don't disturb me." Then slipped out of the castle and made for the Whomping Willow. Little Green rustled as his presence neared, thumping its branches in a happy greeting. Robin quickly told it to stop. He didn't want any commotion attracting Professor Sprout, and miraculously, the tree fell still. It looked almost ashamed for making a fuss. He pressed his palm to the bark and murmured comforts until the willow relaxed again. "Sk," he thought, "such a child." He pushed aside root after root until he found a wide hollow between two that was large enough for a person to crawl through. "This is the tunnel to the Shrieking Shack?" he asked softly. A finger-thick root shuddered and pointed downward as if answering. Satisfied, Robin wriggled headfirst into the passage. He followed a downward-sloping dirt tunnel, crawling belly flat until the roof forced him to stoop. He tapped his wand twice and whispered, "Lumos." A steady white orb glowed from the tip, revealing a long, winding tunnel threaded with roots of all sizes that poked through the earthen walls. The air was stale, damp, and moldy. He pressed a handkerchief over his mouth and nose and hurried on, keeping his wand held low. 50 minutes later, the tunnel began to slope upward. Sweat stung his forehead. It was longer than he'd expected. After another turn, a weak, small light marked the exit. The passage opened into a small, dusty room. Wallpaper had long ago peeled away, straw and stains littered the floor, and the battered furniture bore claw marks and bite scars. The windows were boarded, and dim light seeped in from a wide-open door at one side. Robin walked through into a narrow hallway and then into a broad courtyard rimed with snow. Beyond lay a cluster of low buildings. The Shrieking Shack stood on the village's edge, avoided by the locals ever since Lupin's full moon howls had given it a haunted reputation. Even wizards preferred not to provoke whatever trouble roamed there. He changed at once. Under the open sky, he swapped his Hogwarts robes for a fitted winter coat and a pair of height-adding leather boots. He drew a long black cloak over his shoulders, raised its hood, and fixed a plain mask over his face. A quick charm altered his hair to gold and his eyes to sky blue. When he was satisfied with the disguise, he set off across the snow toward the village. Although it wasn't yet Christmas, Hogsmeade's main street looked like a festive card. Steep roofs, heavy with crisp white snow, holly wreaths hung at every door, and enchanted candles trembling in windowsills. His first stop was the nearest joke shop, only one building from the famous Honeydukes. A large glass window displayed an array of prank items: firework balloons that burst when they rose, teacups that bit noses, sweets that caused uncontrollable hiccups, perfumes that stole your sense of smell, and exploding cannonballs that let off the smell of dung. Near the stairs, the Weasley twins, unmistakable with their flaming hair, were hatching mischief. Robin drifted past like any other customer and overheard snatches of their conversation. They were still obsessed with Mrs. Norris. Last time they'd turned Filch's cat into a hairless creature, and she had stayed hidden for a week until an animal hair growth potion coaxed her back into patrol. This time, they talked about something much crueler, an ever-growing furry monster. Vicious, too vicious, he thought, and smiled grimly. He browsed the shelves and eventually chose a small vial of transparent pigment, a liquid that revealed color only under certain conditions and evaporated without a trace. 10 nuts changed hands, and Robin pocketed the purchase before heading toward the sweet shop. 59. If you want to trick people, no way. Honeydukes was packed with students. Shelves sagged under the weight of every confection imaginable: almond toffee, honeyed toffee, coconut ice cream sweets, and multicolored fruit nougat. Along the left wall, barrels were stacked to the ceiling. Chocolates, Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, fizzing whiz-bees. The right wall held the more magical treats: bubblegum that filled a room with pale blue bubbles when chewed, toad-shaped peppermints that would hop in your stomach after you swallowed them. The display glittered and shifted. It was easy to get lost staring at it all. Robin wasn't here for candy. He was thinking about herbs, but he couldn't help himself. He squeezed through the crowd and picked out a large barrel of chocolate frogs. He didn't like their taste, but he loved the collectible cards inside. After paying, he left the shop and walked down the street past the Three Broomsticks, Scrivenshaft's quill shop, and Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions, until he reached Dogweed and Deathcap, the apothecary. The shopkeeper was a short, plump wizard in a light brown cotton jacket, with a gentle smile and a voice that always seemed to rise at the end of a sentence. In Robin's previous life, he'd worked endless part-time jobs. He knew a boss like this too well. Polite and ingratiating, the sort who could be the most slippery when it came to money. "Sir, what can I do for you?" the shopkeeper chirped. "Do you carry a complete selection of herbs?" Robin asked, sliding a slip of paper out of his pocket. "Sir, rest assured, this shop has been open for hundreds of years. If a herb can be found, it will be found here," the shopkeeper said, puffing with pride and just the right amount of self-importance. Robin unfolded the paper, a dense list of potion ingredients. "I'll take 2 of everything on this list, each package individually wrapped." "Very good, sir. Please wait a moment." The shopkeeper's orange eyes brightened like coins. He clambered onto a small adjustable stool and threaded his plump body through the aisles. 30 minutes later, he returned with a teetering tray of 94 paper-wrapped bundles. He lowered his eyes sheepishly. "I'm terribly sorry, sir. We don't have crony spinal fluid, saliva lotus juice, or ergot spore powder in stock. If you have time, I can write to headquarters." Robin smiled inwardly. Of the 50 ingredients he'd listed, only about a dozen were actually needed for the potion he intended to brew. He'd padded the list to keep anyone from guessing. "No need, I'm leaving the village tomorrow. How much do I owe you?" "Sir, that will be 357 galleons, 13 sickles, and 20 nuts. I'll round it down for you, 357 galleons even." Robin gave him a blank look. The shopkeeper's grin stayed perfectly calm. Robin had expected some squeezing, so he brought out a leaflet and threw it on the counter. "Dogweed and Deathcap," with pictures of the titular plants. The shopkeeper didn't react at first. "The flyer clearly states a shop-wide 20% discount from mid-November until Christmas, with no restrictions on herb types or membership," Robin said, tapping the print. He brushed a fingertip over the floral illustrations. The little dogweed and deathcap images lifted off the paper and whirled in the air like enchanted confetti, an anti-counterfeit charm revealing the flyer's authenticity. The shopkeeper's face went white. He slapped his forehead as if he'd just remembered something. "Oh, my memory. Of course, I handed those flyers out a week ago. With the 20% discount, after rounding, the total comes to 285 galleons." The shopkeeper winced as if losing 72 galleons personally hurt him. His politeness didn't waver, though. "There you are, sir." Robin reached into his cloak and pretended to pull out nothing but air. The shopkeeper's smile twitching, he cleared his throat. "Sir, the apothecary is a small business. We don't offer credit." "I'm not asking for credit. I just want to inspect the goods before I pay." "Of course, sir." Robin scanned the tray at a leisurely pace and then casually opened 3 packages. The first was lavender. Half the leaves were inexplicably black, the blossoms inconsistent. The second held dried Fijian lizards that were pitifully undersized. The third was dragon's liver, powdered stove earth that was too pale. It hadn't been fired long enough and would be far less potent. "Sk," Robin said, tapping the polished counter. "I opened 3 at random, and all 3 are flawed. Shall I inspect the other 91 one by one?" The shopkeeper's jaw tightened. He knew full well there weren't 3 bad packs at random. He'd left some old stock in the box. He forced a smile and, fumbling, produced 3 pristine replacements of lavender, dried lizards, and dragon's liver. "I'm terribly sorry, sir. I must have mixed some old packages in while I was packing. As an apology, I can give 50% off those 3. Robin raised an eyebrow. 50%? "That's the best I can do. 80%, Robin said flatly. The shopkeeper blinked. "Sir, if you don't reduce it, I'll tell everyone about the substitution and your habit of corner cutting," Robin added, voice calm as he leaned forward. The shopkeeper's polite facade faltered. One rumor could do more damage than a discount would cost. The man swallowed and sagged. "All right, 228 galleons then. Pay up, please." Robin paid without a second thought and slung the large bag of paper packages over his shoulder. If the shopkeeper hadn't tried to cheat, Robin wouldn't have squeezed such a discount out of him. It was the way of things. A few doors down, he ducked into Dervish and Bangas and bought 3 sets of potion brewing equipment. He stowed everything in his undetectable extension charm, his Sea of Consciousness bag, and walked on. Passing Madame Putafoot's, he slowed deliberately and glanced in. The tea shop was a pink, lace-trimmed cocoon. Steam curled from teapots, and everywhere there were young couples on awkward, adorable dates. Sugar bowls were shared, fingers nudged, lips brushed. A few pairs had abandoned manners entirely. The blonde girl pressed close to her companion, and he returned the favor, hands and mouths far too busy for the little porcelain bowl between them. Robin's mouth curved. Tomorrow, he thought, I'll bring Xiao Lajiao here and see what happens. He felt his heartbeat quicken at the thought and stepped on the pace, soon arriving at the low, battered entrance of the Hog's Head. The tavern's facade was falling apart. A rusted iron bracket held a rotting wooden sign, and a bloody pig's head wrapped in a white cloth, now dark with dried blood, hung askew. The place screamed atmosphere. Robin took a breath and pushed inside. The interior was no better than the shrieking shack. Thick grime dulled the few bay windows. The floor felt soft and uneven underfoot. There was almost a foot of filth piled on it. Wizards in odd costumes crowded the bar, paying no heed to the filth as they raised cups and shouted, "Fill her up." The air reeked of cheap liquor and mutton. It made his head ache. Before he reached the counter, a fight broke out at the bar. A wizard in a pig's head mask and another in a dog's head mask started arguing and quickly escalated to throwing punches and bottles. Glass shattered. Iron kettles clanged, liquor splashed everywhere. Not wanting to get caught in the crossfire, Robin turned and left the Hog's Head pub. With Whomping Willow Little Green around, getting to Hogsmeade should have been a matter of minutes, no, an hour. He'd planned to head back the way he'd come, but a narrow path near the pub entrance caught his eye. At its end sat a tiny, thatched junk shop. He decided to go in and see if there was anything useful. The shop was no more than about 2 meters wide and 3 meters deep. There were no shelves. Items were piled on the floor in 3 messy columns, each marked by a little triangular flag. 1 galleon, 10 nuts, 5 sickles. A small counter sat by the door, and behind it the shopkeeper dozed. His pupils were pinpricks, no bigger than mung beans, and the whites of his eyes had an odd green tinge. Robin waved his hand in front of him. The shopkeeper didn't react. "I can see," the man muttered. "The sacks are over there. Prices are marked. Fill one and pay later." He pointed to the sacks, then went back to his meditative stare. Robin picked an XXL sack and activated his magic scanner. Whatever item had enough value, large or small, he shoved into the bag. 5 minutes later, he hoisted a sack nearly as big as a stuffed bear and headed for the counter. Then he kicked an old book. A small white insect scrambled out from between its pages, rustling across the floor. It was entirely white, with 2 long antennae and 3 trailing filaments at the rear, its segmented body oddly reminiscent of a mantis shrimp. Robin reflexively lifted his foot to crush it, but the creature didn't die, and a sharp heat flared on the totem at his left collarbone. "Oh, this thing is a magical creature." He bent down to pick up the book and, without drawing attention, slipped the little insect into his giant magic cube. "That book's 1 galleon," the shopkeeper said flatly. Robin frowned. It fell from the 10 nuts pile. The shopkeeper pulled out something like a TV remote, pressed a button with a knotted, tree-like finger, and 2 bright beams shot from the wall. One between the 1 galleon and 10 nuts flags, another between the 10 nuts and 5 sickles flags. Robin stared. When you picked it up, 3/5 of the book was in the 1 galleon area. "We round up, 1 galleon. Rounding up, huh? It was petty, but whatever. He'd found a lot of useful things. He walked to the counter with the book and the sack. The shopkeeper waved an airport security scanner-like device over the bag a few times, then announced, 183 galleons, 7 sickles, 20 nuts. After paying, Robin asked, "Are you an artifact forger?" The shopkeeper didn't answer. He tossed Robin a palm-sized booklet. Robin flipped it open. Skunk and Cattail Magic Artifact Shop. Custom orders starting at 50 galleons. Forging materials sold separately. The shopkeeper went back to his quiet trance. Robin stowed everything in his spatial storage, changed back into his regular clothes, and let his consciousness sink into his sea of consciousness. Inside the magic cube, The little white insect scurried in a white containment grid. Robin opened it and poked the creature's totem, bringing up a light screen readout. Name, species, silverfish. Spirit insect rank, E rank, personality, likes narrow crevices, nocturnal, agile. Physical condition, healthy. Skills, extensive reading, can replicate text images 1-1, storage up to 1,000 characters. Word nibbler, can invisibly devour specified words from manuscripts. Indestructible, iron-like defense for 3 seconds. Magic power, 300 combat power. 10 wonder the kick didn't kill it. Indestructible made it temporarily impervious. Extensive reading, though, was invaluable. If he couldn't borrow a book, he could just copy it. Robin named the white insect Little Book and watched as the white grid floated back into place. He pulled 3 black, apple-sized lumps from the sack and began feeding the rest of the items one by one into the magic cube's central axis. Cultivation value 30, plus 15, plus 20, plus 70. The magic cube's info scroll updated. Level 3, 3552,000. Not bad. 183 galleons for 3550 cultivation value. Robin checked the contained creature's evolution progress bars. As expected, everyone else hovered between 2 and 5%, except the garden goblin, Grant, whose bar was already at 86%. He smashed 1 black lump into Grant's orange grid and watched the bar jump to 91%. Hopeful. The next 2 lumps filled the bar completely and pushed it into the first percent of second-level evolution. The goblin icon glowed faintly orange. Robin tapped the icon. Grant had evolved. He kept his original skills and gained 2 new ones. Diligent Messenger, can work tirelessly for 7 consecutive days, and temporary free range, can be deployed in the real world continuously for 1 month. His magic power and combat power both doubled, and his rank rose from E to D. Grant had started so low that this evolution felt like a major win. The 2 new skills were exactly what Robin needed. Satisfied, Robin let the grids settle back into their places. He withdrew his consciousness, covered his mouth and nose with a cloth, grabbed his glowing wand, and bent low to proceed through the low tunnel.